Take your seats, please. Good morning. Welcome to the work session for Thursday, September 23rd. If you have a cell phone, we ask that you put it in silent or off mode. As always, we will start the meeting with prayer and the pledge. I'll ask Commissioner Cole to lead us in prayer and Commissioner Wright to lead us in the pledge. Please stand.
Y'all please join me. Heavenly Father, as we come to you this morning, Lord, we just ask for civility in this room, Lord. We ask that each of us use the good sense that you give us, Lord, to make good decisions for our county. Lord, simply remind us that we're just stewards for a short time of that you've allowed us stewardship of. And we give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioners. Do we have the, Brad, do we have the sign-in sheet? So we'll start with public forum. Again, as a reminder, this is a work session, so there'll be no votes taken. This is our chance to discuss things amongst the commissioners and the public and our staff and provide guidance to them.
Everybody about their phones.
And just that reminder about cell phones, please.
That was a start music.
Looks like the first name is Parks.
Okay. Is Parks.
He's late again.
Where are my glasses?
Can't, your glasses don't work upside down. Happy fall, everyone. A nice, beautiful, cool morning.
You got me up early.
Early. I've been up for 3 hours.
Been up for 20 minutes.
Apparently Commissioner Parker isn't up yet.
And Jerry, you with me.
All right. Okay, as a reminder, we do ask you to hold your comments to 4 minutes so that we can get everyone a chance to speak for public forum. First, we have Joni Parks.
Good morning. Joni Parks here. I live in Navarre, Florida. Navarre, Florida. We're in Florida. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Regarding this is a non-agenda item today, but I did want to speak to the special rezoning meeting this evening. The agenda item under new business there, number 4. On September 9th, 2021, Santa Rosa County Zoning Board voted down a request for this change. What I'm going to ask is for y'all to please follow their lead. The Santa Rosa County Land Development Code states that the density of new development proposals is going to be compatible with the existing development and the preservation of stable established areas, the cultivation of smooth transitions in residential densities, and utilization of unique physical features. This request does not sound remotely compatible with the existing community. Although there's sufficient water pressure and firemen to man a house fire with a density of 4 houses per acre, as is current. That's not true for a density of 10 houses per acre. Beaver Pond, Beaver Creek drainage into East Bay, that would be a disastrous deal. Not only would it horribly pollute the marsh, it would also contaminate a commercial oyster farm located over there in East Bay. Rezoning change from R1 to R2 would be accompanied by an increase in the impervious surfaces, the roads, and would greatly increase runoff into a planned retention pond there. The reasons for a no vote are straight from the policy, 1.1.E.2 for those that care, of the comprehensive plan. Although I'm not a student of the comprehensive plan, I have done my due diligence to better understand the parameters and definitions in the LDC and the comp plan. I make no statement that, I'm, up on that. There's a lot of folks in this room right now that are way up on that than I am. But I did do some due diligence so that I'd have an understanding of what I'm talking about here. This appears to fall within the definition of urban sprawl as defined, and hence it's not allowed under the plan, contrary to what the applicant states. This is one reason that we have a zoning board, to dig and study and research the requests they receive and make the recommendations based on the LDC and the comp plan and legal definitions therein, which they have done. They're an example of folks that know a lot more about this stuff than I do. Many area residents and the homeowners association over there have let it be known, and we're talking about Hickory Shores area, let it be known that they, the governed, do not approve of this rezoning. The folks directly affected by this request have made it quite clear with their communications to the BOCC and the zoning board that they do not, and have cited the many ways that this request goes against the policy and individuals' concerns there. The case to deny this request, it's been made and it's quite clear. Any vote other than no to this request is contrary to the consent of the governed over there. Although our home is not directly affected by this zoning request, we understand and we empathize with our neighbors, and we support them in their effort to retain a degree of peace and safety in their neighborhood. When we incorporate as a city in Navarre, we will still respond and support our neighbors in other areas of the county that are not within the city limits, because we're neighbors. And that's what good neighbors do. Like Pace, Crestview, Niceville, Gulf Breeze, Milton, the future city of Navarre has its own unique identity that we celebrate. We're also members of a larger neighborhood with its own identity, and that's Santa Rosa County, and hence our support for our neighbors in the county. Please observe and follow the recommendations of our zoning board. Please listen to and abide by the wishes of those who are directly affected by this zoning request and vote to deny it. And I would like to thank members of the commission and their continued communications. Dave Peach, who's my district commissioner, I appreciate the town halls that we have so that we can communicate, with each other so that we know what's going on. When I know you guys get a lot of caffeine.
We need to wrap it up. If we've got 4 minutes.
Caffeine-fueled emails. I appreciate you taking the time to respond, even if it's just with, yes, I got your message, it's on my radar. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you. Next we have Lawrence Baldwin. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm sorry, I'm not a regular person that visits here, so I hope I'm doing the right thing. I have some pictures of what I'm about to speak about, if you feel they're relative. In our subdivision, my subdivision I live in is Sheridan Wood subdivision in Pace. It's one of the older subdivisions, and the covenants and restrictions in the subdivision were developed in 1974. And within those restrictions, there was a paragraph that specifically addressed a 30-year time frame of them, but after that time frame, the current owners within the subdivision would retain the legal prospects of what's stated in there, that any homeowner could bring action against any other homeowner. And so we never thought about the fact that after 30 years they might need to be renewed. Then as I understand it, the Florida legislature enacted the MARTA Act, something like that, about after 30 years, covenants and restrictions in subdivisions were become null and void, regardless of what was stated in them. And they have a process in that system where you can revise your covenants and restrictions, but it also in that Florida statute gives every homeowner the right to not participate in those new covenants and restrictions. So even if we were to revise our covenants and restrictions, that homeowner could opt out of them. The situation is such, we have tried to get this homeowner to improve the looks of his property through the use of code enforcement. And our problem exists in that there seems to be no county ordinance for code enforcement to follow that addresses the type of situation you see with the overgrowth. And so my request would be that you would consider looking into a new ordinance or possibly revising an ordinance that would give code enforcement the ability to address this type of a situation. We and the homeowners have been advised that we have no legal grounds to stand on with no covenants and restrictions and no county ordinances violation, that any homeowner basically has more rights to allow his property to degrade to this point, and we can't do anything about it. So we don't know what to do at this point. Even if we bring civil action would have to prove that he is there's a legal requirement for him, and there is no legal requirement for him to maintain his property. We have no county ordinance, there's no state statute, and we don't have covenants and restrictions to address in the situation. So we're kind of stuck. We've got this homeowner, and to me the situation could apply to any of our subdivisions, our older subdivisions that are coming up on this type of a situation. And you could allow any homeowner to just let his home go. He's paying the taxes on the home, and he has electricity to the home. So he's not abandoned the home as defined in the state statutes. He maintains an interest in the property. So we can't go with abandonment. But the home was flooded in 2014. The man moved out of it because of the unlivable situations created by that flood. And in 2020, when Hurricane Sally came through, there was more damage done to the house. And there's nothing being done, and it seems like there's nothing can be done.
Okay. Well, I think this is your district. We'll have Commissioner Calkins will get with code enforcement and our legal staff. It gets difficult. We get a lot of calls for people wanting us to tell their neighbor to cut their grass. So that's where it gets dicey. You know, if a house isn't dilapidated or anything, it gets to a point. So we've come across this before, and you know, code enforcement, we have the rules. If the roof's intact and the home is there, how far do we go in telling someone how their house looks is the difficult proposition. So I'm sure Commissioner Calkins will look into it.
I just have a quick question. Is this like a foreclosure type home, bank owned? Is it a private owner? Is there somebody live there?
Private owner.
Private owner. And so there's no one living there though? Is it?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
There's no one living there currently?
There's no one living there currently. When the house got flooded in 2014, he abandoned it. He left it, and because of the unliving conditions. And there's been no one living in the home since. He tried to give it to his son, but his son wouldn't even take it because of the extent of the damage of the home.
Okay. Yeah, these are the kind of homes that I look forward to buy. When I see a rickety home like this, you get them for a good deal and you fix them up, and I mean the area is booming right now.
Well,
and, but if you don't sell it, then you can't buy it. So
he has had an offer on the home from a neighbor across the street, and he refused the offer because it was kind of a low offer. It was lower than what he expected because of the damage to the home. He wants full value for the home, and he refuses to sell it to anybody that won't give him full value for the home.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, and yeah, if since this is my district, if you want to email me this any kind of information regarding it, I'll look into it and talk to staff about it. But I appreciate you coming up here.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Parker.
Just for clarification, because I do know there's other homeowners on that road that are involved. This is in my district. This is really in the heart of my district. It's in Florida town. I'm not sure if you're the gentleman that sent the citizen input form as well, and that I've communicated back with it. I just want to bring the board up to speed. Originally, Devan and Brad probably saw an email about a week ago from one of the homeowners where I had mentioned to Chris and all about, hey, let's put this on the workshop to discuss any possible options. The reason it was not added to the agenda was Chris Phillips had reached out to me and expressed his reasoning for the fact that he discouraged the board from trying to enact any ordinance that would address this. And then Bobby Burkett actually called me on the phone yesterday morning and expressed the same sentiment. He had shared that Escambia County has a significantly higher number of code enforcement officers than we do, and he says they're really challenged if we pass some sort of overgrowth ordinance, that then it does become of where's the fine line. Is it the grass is 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet? And I think what Bobby and Chris both conveyed to us, and as painful as it is, and I would absolutely, and I think you know, and I've definitely told our staff, in cases like this, I look at it as any other law that we do to kind of keep the peace among a dense society that we now have when you've got people living on quarter and half acre lots, is our board has shown precedent for many years, longer than I was here, that they protect and preserve private property rights. And that's what Chris and Bobby said. Hey, if you want to bulldoze your house and let trees grow, or let the house be there and let trees grow, there's a lot of people, quite frankly, and I can tell you, I have some in my district over off of Guernsey Road that they do not want to clean up their properties. And I wouldn't want to live beside it, but that is how they wish to do it. And since they own the property and they pay the property taxes, that's their freedom to have what I may call junk, they call collectibles. And so I will say that there's no traction by any staff member involved in this. If anything, it's them saying, hey, please don't enact something because we don't know how we would enforce it. But I want you to know where my heart is on it, and I've got a dear friend, and Mr. Cook knows who that friend is, that lives right down the road from you. And I definitely feel this house, as Mr. Calkins' own statement said, is bringing down the property values to neighbors. You probably got mice and rodent problems. You could even potentially, we've heard from our sheriff's office, we've got more transients moving into Santa Rosa County. It could turn into even a homeless type problem. Bobby Burkett mentioned, and I don't know the legalities of this, technically it's probably trespassing, but if some neighbors wanted to get together and go over there and cut the grass and mow it and clean it up, he said he has seen that happen in other neighborhoods where I know it's not your fault or problem, but I don't have a solution for it. I will tell you that I would give you the full support of our county staff, our admin team, and our attorney if they can provide any ideas, whether that be through civil suits or whatever, that you could force them to clean it up, or if you could possibly reach out to the owner and get permission that even a volunteer group of neighbors go in there and clean it up. But I wanted to bring that out so there was no misperceived conception that the county was working on an ordinance by that. I'm glad you brought it up today. If any other commissioner has an appetite for that, maybe they would give a different direction, but I think they're just worried that how do you enforce it, because it is a fine line. Just wanted to clear the air on that again. I support staff helping you in any way, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Commissioner Parker. Commissioner Wright.
Commissioner Parker, I agree with you. Without an HOA, it does get very difficult. I would just encourage the gentleman, if you'll reach out to Commissioner Parker, I think the idea about getting some neighbors together and possibly doing a cleanup with permission from the property owner, if you guys will get together and let me know if they can organize that, we'll take care of getting them all the equipment they need to get it done at no charge.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins.
I love solutions like that, and I just want to say I agree with Commissioner Parker as far as property rights. There's a lot of homeowner association. I decided to live in a homeowner association, but I used to not live in a homeowner association. There's advantages to disadvantages in both. But as far as making our county a homeowner association, I don't think a majority of our citizens would like that. So I agree with Commissioner Parker on property rights issue and stuff like that. But those are the kind of properties I look for to buy, because the worst house in the neighborhood, if you buy it, you can turn it into the best house. You just made the whole neighborhood go up. So, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Cole.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to chime in because I've dealt with this since I've been on the board, especially like areas like Skyline, where you could literally watch from my friend's house across the street, you could literally watch rats running across the windowsills of the house, and nothing can be done. And that's, to me, ridiculous. I would like to see, and I'm for property rights. I've got people we call junk cars in my yard, but they're behind a fence or be far enough off the road that other people can't see them. To keep somebody, the frontage of your property nice and have a privacy fence, which you do behind that privacy fence, really should be irrelevant to the community and to the county. But, the frontage of people's property degrades the neighbors if it's not maintained. And like I say, especially to the degree where you can, and I called the health department. Well, there's rats running around this house. Isn't that a health issue? So I'd be willing to at least have staff review what possibly other counties are doing. I mean, I know it puts more of a burden on our employees. It may look like I'm stepping on somebody's property rights, but when your front yard looks like crap, there's no better way to say it. I mean, something should be done. It should be the responsibility of that person, not the responsibility of a bunch of neighbors to go ask him if I can clean up your mess for you. I mean, if you do that, that's fine. That's up to y'all. But it shouldn't be that responsibility. It should be responsibility of that property owner. Put up a privacy fence. Let your weeds grow in your backyard, but keep your frontage just as a neighbor should. If you're going to live in that community with other people of a community, that's what a community is all about. And just because you don't have an HOA, you don't have covenants and restrictions, you don't have, it's called being a good neighbor, it's called common sense, it's called whatever you want to call it. It's not taking away property rights, it's just having respect for the people you live next door to. And if you can't have that respect, then I don't have a problem with the county coming in there and put a fine on it. It's a $500 fine if you can't, and we don't have to measure the grass. I mean, so what? If people are on vacation, the grass gets up, 10, 12 inches tall, that's obvious, But when a house is obviously not being lived in, you got weeds 4 or 5 feet tall, can't even see into the windows, junk in the driveway. Yeah, I mean, our code enforcement people got, a brain between their 2 ears. They can make an assessment of, yeah, this is a nuisance. This is an eyesore. And I'd be willing to at least have staff see what other communities are doing, other counties are doing, and bring it back to the board. So.
Thanks. Let's see, Ms. Lila Smith, you're for an agenda item, correct?
Lila Smith?
Yeah, you're here for an agenda item. Okay, so when we get to that agenda item, next we have Patrick Rooney.
I'm going to pass right now.
Okay. Next, Len Cross. Sorry.
How y'all doing?
Good.
Lynn Cross, 1586 Woodlawn Beach Road. And today I want to talk about building a wall. And I got a scripture here that I want to bring as part of it. And this is in Nehemiah 4. And it says, this is building back the walls of Jerusalem. And they which builded on the wall, and they that bear the burdens with those that laid it, every one with one of his hands they wrought in the work, and with the other they held a weapon. For the builders, every one had his sword girded by his side, and so he builded. And he that sounded the trumpet was me. Anyway, that's what I'm using as a reference. And the wall is the law, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the protection of liberties that have been breached And it's not very difficult to see what the plan is. You can look to Australia, and you can look to our liberties being attacked on a grand scale. And y'all are in government, and it's y'all's job to defend the people's rights to their life, their liberty, property. Everybody, we all have a responsibility. Just like building this wall, it was everybody. Everybody went to work building the wall. And we got to build that wall back. And some of the attacks that are happening in this county and all over is people's bodies are being violated by people using force, intimidation, bribery, threatening their jobs and their livelihood so that they can inject them into their body with a mislabeled vaccine. It's not a vaccine because it doesn't do what a vaccine says. And this is happening around the world. Our governor is making moves in the correct direction, and y'all are starting to make moves in the right direction. But I want y'all to start thinking outside of the box and thinking where you're going to fit in history as being a defense of the people and their rights and their liberty and their body and their person. So this is happening in the medical industry. There's people losing their jobs over this because they're being threatened and they're being intimidated and they use the mask and say, hey, we're going to put a mask on you, or you're going to do this, or hey, we're going to test you repeatedly. Now, the president, or the guy up in the White House or whatever that is up there, he's obviously declaring war against your liberties, and he's threatening even our governor. And it's time to stand up for liberty, and for everybody to take that personal responsibility and get one hand to work on the wall, and one hand you need to hold that weapon, which is one's building a wall for defense, and the other one is ready for offense if necessary. The Declaration of Independence states that our life and liberty and our property and our God, these are God-given rights, and that we form a government just to defend these rights. You can't get more of a breach of a person's liberty than to try to bypass their body and get inside of them. And this would not even be conscionable a few years back. We wouldn't even have thought this would happen, but because the world was instilled with fear and people were looking for a solution, and Bill Gates gave them what he calls the final solution. So it is time to be on the defense. It's also time when there's products that work, such as ivermectin, that are being used in other countries. It's not a conspiracy. They're using it and it works. Now, there's a reason that they're not using it here, and that is a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy to keep something out of the hands of the public that the public needs and is safe and effective. Anyway, I want to get back to my... So let's look and see what we can do. What can you do in your positions to protect the rights of the people in your district from having their livelihood threatened, for having their job threatened, for having their freedom threatened, from having their access to health care threatened? Because these people that are trying to take over the health care system and say, we're going to get rid of everybody here if they don't have this, soon they're going to keep you out of there. They're going to say, you can't come in here unless you get it. So it's not hard to see what's happening. You can look around the globe, look to Australia. We don't want this place to turn into that. So take your positions where you're at and use them for the good of building back this wall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Cochran.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Mr. Cross, and all the hard work you do, and all the, you bring up some great points. I just want to let everyone know that for all of y'all that hadn't been here at the last meeting, Commissioner Cole did basically a motion and to support the governor and to be able to choose whether you want to do a vaccine or whether you don't want to do it, that it should be a personal choice. So that was a motion by Commissioner Cole, seconded by Commissioner Wright. Also, I'd like to say that Commissioner Wright did a proclamation that day supporting the Constitution. So these are all good things. And we have a new staff that's outstanding, a new administrator, DeVan Cook. I mean, I've been working with him, and he's fantastic. And Brad, and so we got a new attorney. That's coming on board in about a month. He's a judge, got appointed by two governors. He's a conservative. He's a great, going to be a great attorney. Santa Rosa County is moving in the right direction. And I think this board's united in that front. And so we'll see what happens, but keep coming up here, keep, use your First Amendment right, because it may take a few meetings, but eventually the board will listen. The last meeting, we have the lowest property tax, the third lowest in the state. We did not raise property tax. We're keeping our taxes low. We defeated the franchise fees. We defeated not we, you did, because you come up here and spoke, and you convinced the board to not do a cell phone tax and those kind of things. So these are all great things. We're headed in the right direction, but it's all thanks to y'all, so appreciate y'all.
Next, we have, I think Cleander Smiley is here for an agenda item, correct? Smiley? Yep, agenda item, okay. Next, we have Molly Jones.
It's going to be hard to go after Lynn. All right, I'm Molly Jones, 6770 Allenfield Road, Jay, Florida. I'm not much of a public speaker, so I actually wrote a speech. So anyway, good morning. My name is Molly Jones. I'm here seeking your help to put an end to the unlawful COVID mandates happening here in Santa Rosa County. As we all are aware, our governor is also against these mandates. So we need our local elected officials to stand up for our rights too. After 17 years in healthcare, I was put on indefinite unpaid leave for not taking the COVID shot. Never in a million years did I think my dream of being a nurse would be taken away for not wanting an experimental shot in my body. In elementary school, we was asked, what would we want to be when we grow up? While most people were saying ballerinas, princess, superheroes, I said I wanted to be a doctor. As I got a little older, I realized how much school it would take to become a doctor, so I changed my dream to becoming a nurse. I knew I still wanted to be in healthcare, where I could take care of sick people and help them get better. I started to fulfill my dream while still in high school. As a junior, I attended the Certified Nursing Assistant program at Laughlin. My plan was to go straight into nursing school after graduation, but God had other plans for me at that time. I graduated high school top 2 in my class with a 4-month-old baby. As a new mother, I decided I would use my CNA degree for a year and then go to nursing school. However, 5 months after graduating, I found out I was pregnant with my youngest son. I continued to work as a CNA, but knew I would not give up on my nursing dream. In 2007, I had found out I was going to lose my scholarships that I was given when I graduated high school if I did not start using them. With the support of my wonderful husband, we talked about it and decided it was time for me to pursue my dream. I went to PJC, attending their CNA to LPN bridge program. 10 months later, I had my first nursing degree. I worked as an LPN for 7 years at a couple local nursing homes, but I knew deep down I really wanted to be in a hospital setting to help take care of sick people. With continued support from my husband and now my boys being a little bit older, in 2014 I went back to nursing school and earned an associate's degree in nursing. I started working in a hospital setting and continued school until I earned my bachelor's degree in 2016. Fast forward to September 10th, 2021. After being a dedicated employee for over 2 years at Santa Rosa Medical Center, I was put on unpaid leave for refusing to take this experimental COVID shot. My nursing dream is being ripped away from me, not because of harming patients, but because of a medical choice that I have made for myself. As a nurse, we advocate for our patients. Sometimes patients make decisions about their care that we may not agree with, but we don't prevent them from making those decisions. We educate on all their options for whatever condition they may have, but ultimately the treatment they want or don't want is their choice. On August 17th, Doug Sills, the CEO of Santa Rosa Medical Center, sent out an email about a new COVID policy that would go into effect on September 6th. I have a copy of that email for all of you. That's part of what I have handed y'all. Basically, the policy says either get this experimental shot or be subjected to bi-weekly COVID testing. If an employee declined, either of these, they would be put on indefinite unpaid leave. This policy did not sit well with me. Mr. Sills is trying to use coercion, force, intimidation to get unvaccinated employees to take this experimental shot. Not only is he bullying unvaccinated staff, he is also discriminating against them. At that time, approximately just over 200 employees out of over 700 employees had actually been vaccinated. So the majority were unvaccinated, yet they were still doing this. I'm almost finished, I'm sorry. On August 31st, I hand-delivered a letter about the email and my religious exemption request to the HR manager at Santa Rosa Medical Center. The letter gave researched information that contradicted some of the points Mr. Sills made in his email. Later that day, I emailed HR director, and Mr. Sills a copy of both the letter and the religious exemption request that I had hand-delivered to HR earlier that day. After many emails back and forth between Mr. Sills and myself, my religious exemption was not granted and nothing changed with the policy. By denying my religious exemption, Santa Rosa Medical Center is not only violating the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, but also Florida's discrimination statute, FL.760.10B. Per that statute, it states it is unlawful for any employment practice for an employer to discriminate against an employee based on race, color, religion, sex, pregnancy, national origin, age, handicap, or marital status. That statute also indicates that religion is broad and personalized and cannot be defined by any other than the individual themselves. This is why we are already seeing class action lawsuits pop up across the country. We have heard Governor DeSantis express his displeasure in companies requiring COVID mandates. What we are asking from our county commissioners is that you utilize any and all leverage that the county may possess in order to stop this blatant violation of law and civil liberties. We have found that the hospital building and grounds belong to the people of Santa Rosa County, and that the county may be in control of the COVID relief funding that could be used as leverage. Thank you for your time. Y'all have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Next we have Mr. Killam, Elton Killam.
Thank you. I'm here today because yesterday I read a case that just came out of the First District Court of Appeal regarding Walden County and a development over there. I'm concerned about the density in this county and the ability to safely evacuate the citizens of Fairpoint Peninsula, Pensacola Beach, Navarre, Midway, etc., all dependent upon bridges for evacuation. I'm wondering if anybody's put any math to the density that the Land Development Code or the Comprehensive Plan would do to the south end of the county in terms of density and whether or not they could meet the state requirements, as I understand it, to evacuate everybody in 18 hours. And that's assuming none of the bridges are knocked out. And if you look at, and then you have to look at the worst case scenario, category 5. And it just concerns me because we're in a county where growth is dramatic. 18% in Midway, we've got to have a new high school. 23 people have resigned from the county. That concerns me. I don't know what world Mr. Calkins is living in, but I would say that's not a good sign. And I'm glad he's got a lot of money. Maybe
I would say it is a good sign anybody can be replaced.
Okay. Well, I happened to be out in the Gulf during Hurricane Camille in 1968. And I remember the blue sky and the mushroom coming at the Gulf Coast. I was 150 miles out in the Gulf, sandblasting and painting. I drove back to Pensacola through Gulfport, Biloxi. There was no interstate. Everybody was coming towards Gulfport. I was going to Pensacola. The hurricane was going to hit Pensacola or Fort Walton. But it's something I remember. And it's scary. And I looked at a video of Grand Isle, and I could see Navarre Beach, Midway, looking just like it. You can look at a 35-minute drone flyover, and it's frightening. And again, my question is, are we in compliance with state law on evacuation under the worst-case scenario? That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Did you want?
I can address that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like. Worst case scenario for Santa Rosa County is 15 and a half hours. We have different decision arcs available to us in emergency management, and we apply them. We try to make sure that the time frame is in the daylight hours, so we always overcompensate our evacuation orders to allow for those decision factors to reach the public so they can be informed and make their decision to evacuate. We do realize that we have a choke point, which is basically in the city of Milton for a mass evacuation, and we have a plan for that to staff that area with law enforcement and keep traffic flowing, not allowing the right and left turn on Willing Street, et cetera, to keep traffic moving out. So, you know, we know that, I believe it was before I got in, maybe Aaron Opal, something like that, one that called us at the last minute and blew up. We had some issues with folks in the documents I reviewed that were basically trapped on the road. We have a shelter of last resort plan with some of the churches throughout the community that would open those up if we got in there. But based on that data, when I took over at emergency management, you know, we make sure that we make a decision in advance of the worst case scenario and allow extra time for our citizens to evacuate if we do deem necessary to make that order.
Thank you. Commissioner Cole.
And Brad, due to that choke point, I'd like to encourage this board, because if Garcon Point Bridge was out, we have one route off the south end, that's 87 South. Now, fortunately, through lobbying efforts of this board in the past, and it's 4-lane now. Last hurricane, I spent 18 hours helping pump gas at the Shell station at 87 and I-10 because for some unknown reason they had power and they had gas in full tanks in the ground. And, you know, it was just, you know, one car after the other. It was coming up and down that road. So I would encourage the board to, you know, as we work with the TPO, as we work with the state government and district transportation, we really need that 87 north-south connector that's been planned for years. The routes left there. It's kind of like, you know, it ebb and flow. You know, one day it's important, it's the top of our priority, and then next thing we know, we haven't even talked about it for a while. So I'd encourage the board to let's get on that track and stay on it until we can get something done to make that 87 north-south connector and help that, because certainly if Garcon Point Bridge was out, that choke point in Milton, I don't care how many dedicated law enforcement officers you put down there, you can only put so much water through the bottom of a funnel. So that's, well.
Can I have one thing?
Sure.
I just want y'all to recall that I said the entire area was bridge dependent. 87 is dependent upon the Yellow River Bridge
sure.
and the East River Bridge.
I'm not arguing that point. but
Okay,
it's,
so choke points are all over.
okay. All right, well, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cooey, are you here for agenda item or public forum? Or both?
Jerry Cooey, Milton, Florida. I want to thank my friend Lynn Cross for opening a lot of people's eyes across this county. And I want to expand upon the liberties lost and a tenant in a building that we, the taxpayers, own. The Board of County Commissioners most assuredly have some authority over what goes on in that building. Just like you have authority over what goes on inside of this building, as the owner of the Santa Rosa Medical Center, if you knew that discrimination was going on, you have an obligation to do something about it. If you know that someone is being harmed, you have an obligation to report it. That building belongs to the taxpayers of Santa Rosa County, lock, stock, and barrel. The folks that are in that building today are simply tenants of that building. And we do have authority over them. Now, where the line in the sand is at is this board going to stand up to an overbearing medical community that so far at Santa Rosa Medical Center has thumbed their nose at the folks in our community. COVID, flu, all the things that affect us as citizens. You know, prior to COVID, we made our own decision about what we did about flu. We got a flu shot or we didn't get a flu shot. We went to the doctor or we didn't go to the doctor. If we felt like we needed to stay home, we stayed home. This is completely out of control. This Board of County Commissioners has the legal authority, and you have some say in what goes on over there, or you can give them notice to vacate the building. I will guarantee you there is another hospital system that'll move in a heartbeat. Won't be a problem getting a rent payment out of somebody. And I want to look at all of you and say, stand up. Have the backbone. Stand. Hang on a second. It's my time.
Trust them.
Stand up. Have a backbone. Send notice to them. Send notice that if you continue to violate the rights of the citizens in this county, you'll be served notice to get out of the building. Now, I have a lot of friends that work over there. I don't think the vast majority of them are the problem. I think there's one man that's the problem. I think a letter from the Board of County Commissioners to the corporate headquarters of that hospital system might do some good. You might be surprised. I will tell you this. Mr. Seals was supposed to show up at a city council meeting, but when he realized there might be somebody there in opposition of his position, he couldn't find his way to the meeting. All right? It's time to stand up, gentlemen. This is wrong what's going on here. You know, do you wait till they go door to door to take our guns? I mean, where's the line in the sand for you? You are elected to protect the citizens. Matter of fact, your only job is the safety and security of the citizens of Santa Rosa County. Take it serious. Thank you.
Commissioner Cole?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for the board, if it's the will of the board, to ask the county attorney to investigate. The other day, we, passed an ordinance, or at least passed it at the board, that we weren't going to mandate our employees have the shot. I would like to find out the legalities. We can't just on the cuff do as Jerry said, but if there is a legal means of enforcing that, being that it is county property. I'm one person that is not taking a shot. My wife won't take the shot. I don't believe in experimenting or us all being guinea pigs. And then I'm looked at that I'm the cause that it's still going on because I won't take the shot. So that's personal choice. I think we ought to enforce personal choice in this county. I don't see anybody, our own military people, the people that sign up, you and I, and I'm not sure, well, Sam served as a police officer. We got thousands of veterans in our county signed up to the United States military to defend the rights and freedoms of our country, and now our own military members are being told, well, you have to take the shot. That's, I can't, I don't know how we can do it. I don't know if legality-wise we can do it, but if there is a means to do it, you got one commissioner's vote to say, we tell the medical center or the hospital that you put these people back to work, you let them have their own freedom of choice. You may tell them, okay, we're going to scan you for fever, but when you come to work in the morning, I'm okay with that. That's not a problem. But other than that, to lay somebody off that's, I don't care if they're the janitor or the head surgeon at the hospital, that should be their right as an American to make that choice. And if we do have a legal means of making that hospital wake up, if nothing else, this conversation today make them wake up, then I'm one vote for that. So thank you.
Mr. Chair.
I think our attorney has the direction she needs to look into that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Calkins.
Yeah, I just want to say a few days. This story is devastating. It's absolutely devastating. What's going on at our hospital? It's in District 3. We are looking into getting the lease, the terms, and I couldn't agree more with solving this problem. It needs to be solved. I thank Commissioner Cole for the support and getting this solved, but we will address this. We will do everything we can to try within the legal realm to make sure this doesn't happen in our county. This is Santa Rosa County. This is Freedom County. And like I said, I appreciate y'all coming up here and bringing this to our attention. But thank you, Commissioner Cole. And yeah, we would like to ask the attorney to look into all of this and to see what we can bring up to the board and get something going.
Okay. Is there anyone else before I close public forum?
Good morning, Yvonne, Navarre, Florida. I have a question regarding the drainage or lack thereof on PGA. I sent an email last week. This is an ongoing issue for about 2 years. There's a homeowner who continually receives the water from her neighbor after it was built and approved by the county, and the retaining wall, the water goes right through. It's been documented for the 2 years. Sent footage last week. The only individual I heard back from was code enforcement. So are there any plans to address the drainage, as I see that there are a couple of drainage issues on the, or I wouldn't say issues, I would say projects. Anything in the works to address this?
Well, based on your email, I asked our county engineer for an update, because that's where I think we left it last time I was out there with you all.
Back in the beginning of the year.
So they were doing surveys and things. So I did ask her for an update. So when I get that, I'll definitely share it.
Okay. Because you're going to see my face every month until there's something.
I'm sorry?
You're going to see my face every month, and I'm going to keep asking about this PGA, because there is no drainage on that street.
There's no drainage.
And when I came this morning, there's still standing water on the street. So thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else for public forum?
Denise Beckham, Milton resident. First of all, going on the vaccine, the devil is a liar. And the FDA approval is for a vaccine that is not even available for the public. And I just want to say this, hoping a lot of people are listening to that. We're being lied to about this vaccine. All right, but that's not why I came here today. Today, going on what Mr. Cooey said, you all are responsible for the citizens in this county. And I'm very concerned with the Sterling Way property. I'm very concerned with that. There's no reason why you would turn down to have a third party outside of this county to come in and do a thorough inspection to make sure that land is not contaminated. You're putting a well there, you're going to move that dirt throughout the panhandle. You wasted tax money, $20,000 on a lawnmower, when you had local businesses willing to pay the bill for that lawnmower. You waste our tax money on noise ordinance meters, but you can't find it somewhere in your heart to find the money to have a third party come in and do an inspection that has no connections to that property. How are you going to feel if you're wrong? How are you going to feel, Mr. Parker, if you're wrong? Can you look me in the eye? How are you going to feel if you're wrong? There has been elevated cases of cancer. They had come here with reports. They thoroughly did reports and came here and begged you to consider checking that property, and now you're going to move it throughout the panhandle. How are you all going to live with yourself if you're wrong? What is it going to hurt to just let a third party do this? I mean, do you all work for Edwin Henry, or do you work for us here in Santa Rosa County? So please, dig deep in your soul and make sure you're right before you let that dirt move from that property and dig another well there. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
just for
Cole?
clarification, where the dirt pit's going to be dug out there has nothing to do with Mr. Henry.
One of the properties,
It's-
yes, one of the properties.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at public forum?
Hi, Patrick Rooney, live in Milton. I signed up earlier. I just want to make a quick comment about the hospital, the county hospital situation. I believe, like probably most of you guys do, that a private business should be free to do as they wish, generally speaking. The problem is that ship has sailed a long time ago in America, and we're forced to do all kinds of things that we shouldn't be done, that we shouldn't be forced to do. But in the case of the hospital, I was thinking about this issue. This hospital is a county hospital, right? We are the owners of that hospital. Is that right? So therefore, you are our arm. And if a county hospital is telling people you have to take a experimental vaccine or you're going to lose your job, that's way out of bounds. And it's not a private hospital. It's a private hospital working under the authority of the people. And you can't tell the American people that we have to take a experimental vaccine in order to keep our jobs. I mean, the governor has been very clear on that. And I guess you guys are going to look into the authority of this, but I'm wondering, how much do you have to look into if you're the owners? If you're the owners and we're the owners, our authorities should be saying, hell no, you're not going to force anybody to take an experimental vaccine. So, this guy's got a problem. But anyway, you know, unless I'm missing something, you guys have lawyers and you guys pay them a lot of money for this. I don't understand what the problem would be. I think it's your guys' responsibility to be our arm and look out for the American people here and the citizens of the county. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Is there anyone else that wants to speak at public forum?
Good morning. I'm Cindy Cagle. I wasn't prepared to speak today, but after hearing Molly and others speak, I felt compelled to talk. I did address the City Council last week about the situation with Molly, and actually, she's not alone. The problem is the fear in this county from employees facing the same circumstances is overwhelming. I've been working to get people to come forward so I could come to you with names and employers in this county that are doing these unfair practices, and they're scared. They won't. I got wind last night that Home Depot is about to enact the same un-American policies and put people out of work because they won't take an experimental vaccine. And that's not the country I want to live in. When I approached the City Council, they directed me to you to withhold funds from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, that you have authority to do that. I don't know what else can be done, but again, like everybody has said, we come to you to represent us and to protect us. And frankly, I don't want to live in a community where I can't get a job because I won't take an experimental vaccine. These people have put their money, their time, their families into these careers only to be told because we can't dictate what you do with your body, you can't work. That's about as un-American as you can get. So as the leaders of our community, we're begging you, and I hope that the next time I come here that I can give you those names, that those people will come out of fear for retaliation or being fired because they've spoken up, that I can give you those names and you can hold these companies accountable. But be prepared. Santa Rosa Medical is not the only company doing this, and we've got to be prepared to deal with it. And I'm coming to you guys to help us deal with it.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Cole?
I just want to make sure everybody's clear. If we have leverage over the medical center because we're the landlords of that building, I'm all for that. But Home Depot, the only thing I could suggest on companies like that, they have, we have no control over them. I just want to make that clear, other than not shop there.
Aren't they disobeying the governor's?
No, ma'am. We have no authority over a private business, whether it be Home Depot or Texas Roadhouse or anybody else. Sir, you've had your time. And, I'm just not going to sit here and take responsibility for private businesses in enforcing that. But you've already heard what I said. If we can do something at the medical center legally, I'm okay with that. So,
Kerry Smith, Milton, Florida. We could quit shopping with Home Depot as a county. No POs with them, whatever. I mean, we can start making a stand against some of these big corporations that we did invite into the county to be employers, responsible employers to the citizens of this county. If we're going over there as the Santa Rosa County employees going over there to buy items for the county, we can start knocking that off the list and say, hey, we're just going to go to Lowe's or Hall's or what have you. But
I hadn't thought of that, so that's an idea.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to address the public forum? Ma'am, you'll have to come back to the microphone because we record that. Quickly, because we can't.
I wanted to make sure.
Would you hit the microphone for me?
Sorry.
Hit the button. Thank
Can
you.
you hear me? Okay. I just wanted to give Molly a little more credit that she didn't share with the community. Not only is Santa Rosa Medical doing this to her, but she made the offer to accept testing for the COVID if they would test both unvaccinated and vaccinated. And that wasn't acceptable. That is clearly discrimination.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir, we're holding, I've been beat up to hold folks to the 4 minutes, and I'm going to do it. No, sir. We've had our 4 minutes. I have to stick to that.
So you can do something about it. It's unconstitutional. It's a violation.
Sir, we have our attorney looking into it. We've discussed this. We're not going to make that decision today. Is there anyone else for
Mr.
public
Chairman,
forum?
I just want to make a quick comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the last speaker brought up a good point. We have federal laws that control businesses regarding discrimination. Well, to discriminate between non-vaccinated and vaccinate is a violation of the Constitution according to federal law. And if there's something we can do, we need to challenge the system under our discrimination precedents. That's how we do it. But like I said, we got an attorney here now that's going to work on this. I'm going to do everything I can to fight for non-discrimination. We can't discriminate against people. I don't have the vaccine because I chose not to. I'm not against it, but It's my choice. I want to give it time and see how it goes. You know, I don't want to be an experiment. So, yeah, thank you.
Chairman.
Thanks. I'm going to close public forum. We're going to move on to community corner.
Chairman, can I just correct
I'm
something
sorry.
real quick so that everyone understands? For private companies, there are other ways outside of the county through the state in order to bring these concerns to. Also, under federal law and state law, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated is not discrimination under the law, and it is not protected, and therefore that would not be a basis to bring it. And if you brought it to an attorney, then they would say the same thing. I understand that we feel like it's discrimination. You're treating two different groups, but it's not a protected category, especially under federal law.
Mr. Chairman, in response to that, well, so wasn't discrimination in general was not a protected category before. But we had a civil rights movement. We had a proactive group of people that said, you know, they went against discrimination, and it starts here. It starts at the local level, and you ain't going to get nothing done just sitting back. And we have an opportunity. We have a group of citizens that want to challenge what's wrong. And so we at the local level, you know, we could pass something, and if the courts strike us down, then we'll appeal it. Then the courts strike us down, we'll appeal it. Then the U.S. Supreme Court, you know, vaccine, just an example, vaccine versus Santa Rosa County, you know, could be the law of the United States, but it starts here. And appreciate you.
Thanks. We will move on to Community Health of Northwest Florida.
We're going to do everything we can to help you.
Come on, Mr. Holland.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kyle Hawley, currently working in the grants and special project area of the county, and this morning we have a presentation from Community Health of Northwest Florida. We have their CEO, Chandra Smiley, who's here with us. This is an example of the federal government moving into our area, expanding services for those, expanding healthcare services for those who really don't have access. So we're going to hear a little bit about a new facility that they have expanded into that's down at the TRX building, and we're going to hear about how some services have been expanded for hardworking Americans who really don't have access to dental care and some of these other things. And so we are happy to be here this morning, happy to see and hear the discourse that's occurring, but we also are here to comment on services for those folks who are not able to come in and ask for the help that they need with some of the additional types of cares unrelated really to vaccines. So thanks and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to have a little bit of time with you this morning. I want to start today with a little bit of history about Santa Rosa Community Clinic. Since 2009, we're on Stewart Street right across from the high school in those white cinder block buildings. And how the clinic was started was because of two gentlemen, local physicians, Dr. Bert Sutton, who was the administrator of the health department for many years, and Dr. Ron Maddox, who was a general surgeon here in the community. And as they were rounding out their careers, they realized that there was a significant need to provide primary care services for uninsured residents of Santa Rosa County. So they started a volunteer clinic that predated 2009, and at the time they seeked support and partnership with then Escambia Community Clinics, which is now Community Health Northwest Florida, and created this volunteer clinic. In 2009, Escambia Community Clinics was awarded a federal grant, a new access point grant, to the tune of $475,000 to provide comprehensive care services to the residents of Santa Rosa County. And at that time, Dr. Bert Sutton was heavily involved, along with Dr. Maddox, in the merger of that volunteer clinic as a part of Escambia Community Clinics. Unfortunately, we lost Dr. Sutton in 2009, late 2009, unexpectedly, but Dr. Maddox joined the organization and became a primary care physician until his untimely death in 2017. we have continued to honor their legacy in providing healthcare services for all who come through our doors. 28% of the individuals we care for are uninsured. We have expanded our service lines to include not only primary care services, but pediatric care and behavioral health and wellness. In 2020, in spite of what COVID and the challenges that COVID brought to our organization, we saw in those cinder block buildings over 12,000 pediatric and primary care visits. Through the partnership and support of Ed Carson, we were able to secure the building on Caroline Street, the 24,000 square foot TRX building that he referenced. And what that has given us the opportunity to do is not only add additional space for primary care services. Right now we have Dr. Hudson and Jeremy Olmstead as our primary care providers. The space at Caroline Street creates enough exam rooms that we could add another primary care physician. We've expanded our pediatrics, so we have April Archer as our pediatric provider, and in November, Dr. Ravenel, a pediatrician, will be joining us here in Milton to provide care for our pediatric patients. Our behavioral health and wellness area, we have enough to accommodate adult behavioral health and wellness services as well as pediatrics. And then we added 8 dental operatories. So dental is not a service that we've ever been able to offer in this community, and we are heavily recruiting a dentist and hygienist so that we can offer dental services as well. The other service line that we were able to add to this campus is a pharmacy. We have an in-house pharmacy. It's an open pharmacy in that you don't have to be a patient of community health to have your prescriptions filled there, but it certainly improves med adherence and the opportunity for a pharmacist to consult with a practitioner on site if there's any questions or concerns in regards to medications or treatment that patients are being prescribed. So we're really excited. We started seeing patients in Caroline Street on August the 9th. We had grand plans to do a ribbon cutting and an open house. Unfortunately, we had to delay that. We are looking to, perhaps in the holidays, having a cookies and cocoa, kind of a drop-in, invite the community to come by and take a tour and learn more about who we are and what we're doing. Outside of that, I invite each of you to come and take a tour and spend some time learning about more about our programs and our staff. I do want to acknowledge Madeline Mayer, who is our clinical office manager for our Milton campus, as well as our location in Pace. We have a pediatric location in Pace that sees about 7,000 patients annually in that location. There are 2 things that I'd like to point out. One is, our ability to expand our services and our scope comes from partnerships and support. And you, as a board, have annually supported this organization to the tune of $87,500 annually. Those funds go to offset the uninsured care that we provide to our patients. We have the opportunity this year to use the $87,000 as a match to pull down additional funds through what's called low-income pool. So community health centers throughout the state are eligible for this low-income pool. The process is, unlike in years past where the distribution of the funds has been in 1/12, the process is that by October the 1st, there's a letter of agreement that the county commission signs and submits to ACA. And that is basically a pledge so that ACA has an understanding from the municipalities throughout the state what funds are able to be put up as match. And then there's, in the early part of the year, the match is sent up to the federal government to pull down those additional dollars. It's at a minimum a dollar for dollar match, so we could potentially double the 87. It could be more, just depending on what the state pool looks like. So my ask is that, that you as a board consider signing this letter of agreement so that it can be submitted to ACA by the October 1 deadline, and for us to be able to utilize those funds, or at least double the funds to pull down. Two other things that I'd like to mention is that as we designed this building and the programmatic space is one, as a safety net provider, we want to make sure that we are primed and ready and up and at 'em for operations in the event of a natural disaster. So the building is primed and outfitted for a generator. We have been awarded a federal grant to purchase the generator. We are in the procurement process to do that. And the other piece is we built out space to add in X-ray and a mammography unit. We are on the eve of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. For our patients, when you're looking at patients with limited access to health insurance, primarily are women aged 40 to 65, this is a screening that they many times forego, and early detection is the best chance that we have in having a positive outcome in a diagnosis such as breast cancer. So my second ask would be assistance in purchasing a 3D mammography unit that could finish out the building and the services that we provide. We as an organization would take on the interfaces, the software, the installation, the maintenance, and the staffing of that service. A refurbished 3D mammography machine through Henry Schein is about $253,000.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Cole.
First of all, I'd like to thank Ed Carson and his company for the vision of a building that's sat empty in Milton for probably at least 5 years, maybe longer, 10 years, maybe. A nice building, but it was just sitting there, and I think a lot of the reason why there wasn't a need for it, and it was probably overpriced at the time. I appreciate your dedication to this, and I go back to the day when I seen Dr. Sutton rolling around in his wheelchair to every one of our offices and twisting our arms to make sure those funding stayed in place, which it didn't take a lot of arm twisting, but he was certainly there, and I miss him. He was quite a character. So, Mr. Chairman, would like to board this. I know we can't vote today, but I think time is of the essence on that letter, so I'd like to. Okay, all right, if we can put that on Tuesday's agenda to get that letter to allow the $87,000 to be used as a match, and also on Tuesday's agenda to put on there that we use some of the federal funding that's coming down, and in lieu of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and having a wife that had a scare for a while, and thank the good Lord that it was just that, a scare, but knowing how important that is and how it affects, not just women, but, men can get breast cancer. So I'd like to put it on the agenda that we use part of that federal funding and buy that machine. And I know she said a refurbished one. Does it come with a warranty, guarantee, or anything?
Yes, they do, and we have purchased a refurbished mammography machine for the Pensacola location through Henry Schein, and it has performed quite well and comes with warranty. I don't know for this specific machine. I can certainly get that.
Okay, well, and bring back by Tuesday. What's the difference in a refurbished and a new machine?
New one, okay.
I mean, and also the warranty. I mean, if we get more bang for the buck in the long run, then of course it's up to the board, but I'd say that'd be a consideration to go from a refurbished to a new machine. And thank you for your time this morning.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to staff updates. First up is the engineering with the Ashmore Drainage Project Phase 2 discussion. Morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Commissioners. We just want to give you guys a brief update. We do have 3 design options that we're prepared to move forward with as part of the Ashmore drainage study. This is Phase 2B. So Phase 2A is the Ashmore, actually in Ashmore and the pond north of Ashmore. So this is the conveyance system from Berry Hill out to the Vinewood Pond. So we do have three options. Sabrina, can you pull those? Nope. Here. So I'll get Sabrina to help me with that. I did bring Jeff Huggins here from Baskerville Donovan. He's the designer. So we have the three options that we wanted to just let you guys take a look at. We do have a staff recommended option, which is the portion coming down Woodbine Road and over to the Vinewood Pond, but just let you guys kind of be transparent so you can see what the three options are if you wanted us to look at a different route.
Becca, would this be the, just with the natural pause, would this be the appropriate time to ask a question about the recommended option?
Certainly.
I'll ask you and the attorney or anybody that has experience in the field. I noticed the only challenges under the recommended option was easement acquisition, because it obviously varies from where the old path that we thought we had an easement and we didn't, the ditch there. So my question is, when we say that's a challenge and the other ones talk about cutting Woodbine and taking longer, I don't think me nor any member of this board could accurately tell you which direction to go without knowing what that challenge entails. So I would like to hear, I mean, best case scenario is they say, yeah, here's an easement, or here's, whatever my deal. Worst case scenario, somebody, and we've seen it happen with that easement that we had to buy down there that Gulf Power already had through the guy. I think it was actually District 5, and we saw that same gentleman, like, I'll just say it, you said sometimes you gotta call it like it is, try to rape the county because we needed right away, and they say they want 100 times what the appraised value is. So with eminent domain being worst case scenario for this option, what kind of time frame are we talking? Because I can't really know if it's quicker than the others. As we're saying, we don't know, we can't force them to give an easement without eminent domain process, and I think this board's got to vocalize too, are we willing to go down that road if necessary? I know we talk a lot about property rights, but I'll be honest with you, I appreciate the interstate system. I appreciate a lot of things, and when we talk about getting flooding off all those folks up there in James's district, I would support that if that's what we have to do, but I think the board needs to know what kind of time frame we're talking about.
Yes, sir. Between the differences in the three options, the only easements that would be, or the primary easements that would be need to be acquired between Chumuckla and Woodbine are equal for all three projects. So that one would cancel out across all three of those projects. Staff has been proactive in reaching out to those landowners already, and met in the field. We met with them to discuss the options, and as of now, that first easement that we would need to acquire between Chumuckla coming out of that box culvert and Woodbine is willing to move forward.
And it says in the backup that I don't know who that property owner is. I guess I should have pulled it up before we got here. It says that they've got a rezoning coming before the board.
Yes, sir. That's the easement closer to the Woodbine, just to the south and west of Publix. Yes, sir. So they're interested in discussing with us, but because they had that rezoning on the table, they wanted to kind of wait to see how that rezoning.
And that's under the power line easement, it looks
Yes, sir.
like.
Yes, sir.
So we know they can't use it. I mean,
Yeah,
I've
I believe
dealt
even
with
if they get the
FPL on that.
rezoning, we probably can work with that developer to probably acquire what we need.
I'm only going to say it, and I don't even know that the legalities of the way these rezonings work, but I'll say it just like we did with the people off Berry Hill, where we had Angie Jones come prior to us approving the rezoning and giving the right-of-way. I mean, I know I voted against the project, but I'm just saying that's the way it went. The only leverage we have, really, is before that rezoning. When this board rezones it, and if you don't think there's people out here, I don't know who the owner is, so I'm not saying this is one, but there are people in this county that have absolutely shown their true colors, and they will take advantage of the taxpayers by asking for exorbitant costs for things that we need. This is a drainage project, so I would just encourage you, I don't mind telling them, I'm saying it on the record, if they're not going to help me relieve drainage on other people, I'm probably going to advocate pretty hard against their rezoning for them to, I mean, they rezone for one reason, to make money. And so I think our leverage is there if we go with that route, and so I just want to point that out.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Cole.
Explain something to me, because these options aren't numbered. I'm looking at two sheets of exactly the same, except for one says existing pipe to be removed. That's, that goes across that field, kind of corner across the field.
Yes, sir. On that option, we did leave that in place just as an option in design once we get to running the hydraulic model on what water's coming down there, to go directly down to Vinewood and take a 90 staying within the existing right-of-way. We do have an easement across that currently that we have some pipe in, but to keep that in service during construction, we do have that option.
Why would we even mention existing pipe to be removed?
Some of that is going to have to be, the pipe sizes will increase on the beginning of that. Okay. The pipe sizes to the southwest are larger. So we're going to have to do work in there for sure.
So the right-of-way won't be abandoned, it'll be just enlarged?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, when it kind of confused me. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I just want to say I agree with Commissioner Parker on the proposed rezoning potential and saying, you know, that this is something we need that'll benefit the citizens. And eminent domain's like the last resort, you know, but it's needed. I mean, someone mentioned the interstate system. You know, you have to, and you have to do that in order to benefit, you know, the whole group, you know. But and the great thing about America, though, is that we give the value. We don't just take land. We give the value, if not more, than what it's worth usually. And so I appreciate all of this. This is going to benefit Santa Rosa. For all the folks that say we're not working on flooding issues, well, that's not true, because this is an example of us working on flooding issues. I know that all the commissioners in every district is working with staff, you know, regarding flooding issues. So I appreciate all the work y'all are doing with this. This is a great project, and looking forward to getting it done. But you have my support, Commissioner Parker, on potential rezoning on.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing.
Commissioner Cole.
Just like we currently did with Trump Boulevard and negotiated with the, you know, for a park and stuff, some trade out. That's what I'd suggest Commissioner Parker does on this, and then that is in, you know, basically that contract or agreement is in place prior to the zoning. And that's just a suggestion on how you may want to handle this.
So are you looking for guidance from the board on which option, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do have the staff recommended option, which is the option to come down Woodbine and then head west along Vinewood. But we definitely have the other two options in there in case the board wanted to entertain those.
Okay. Commissioner Parker, do you want to? I mean, we're not voting. This is just direction for them to pursue and then bring back.
So I did look it up. I think this is Mike Neal's property. Mike's been a developer probably since before I popped out of mama's womb, but I think he'll probably be a pretty good partner with the county. I don't know him personally. I just know he's got a great reputation. The good thing is I don't think he needs the money to try to rape the county for the easement. Again, I think if y'all are just looking for the nod to go with the recommended one, I fully support your recommendation. I think Commissioner Calkins can tell Mr. Bigelow, and that way he can tell his community that obviously it looks like a design is in place. So at this point, just so that he can convey that to his constituents, what kind of time frame before, now that we say, yes, this is what we want to do, before you can have your design totally buttoned up so that we would be able to bid out for construction? What do we think?
We would start with a survey. I would estimate 8 or 9 months, probably permit in hand, getting on right on the heels of our Ashmore project that we have going on now. We do have the opportunity to bring everything as one package to the regulatory authorities so that we can get that through permitting together.
I think that'd be fantastic. And so, yeah, I think the will of the board, unless I hear otherwise, is to support your recommendation, the recommended option. And, you know, I'd be happy to go out there. Rebecca has done fantastic in the past, to my knowledge, honest to God truth. I was bragging on her yesterday to one of the Gulf Power employees about I won't narrow down which one. I think she knows. She helped us obtain a construction right away, and when she told me the deal she made, it was fantastic for the county. So if you need my assistance, fine, but I almost think she does better without me. So, but thank you so much, and I know from the bottom of, I know James has went out there and met with a lot of folks, more than I have in his district. I can tell you, obviously, my in-laws, folks in Crossroads, we really appreciate you working on it and making sure, too, we don't say it enough, that when this happens, man, let's do it right the first time. And I know that's always your goal, but like that's just that extra emphasis is this is not a course that says, well, the commissioners are wanting this in 8 or 9 months, we got to do this. You know, the number one thing is the quality of the project, so that hopefully we never have a house in this area flood again. But we appreciate you working on it.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cole?
I got to know what I'm forwarding first, because these are not marked by option. And maybe I'm missing something, but I understand the first two pictures, getting the proposed easement and the existing easement, that's fairly understandable, but I'm looking at 3 more overheads of that big square pasture with the angle drainage across it. So which one of these 3 pictures am I?
So that, the third picture is the recommended option, and that's where we have the green line that's coming down to the south of Woodbine Road and then crossing over at Vinewood. So that's the recommended option. And then the next page is option...
Should be option 2.
2.
Yep. The second recommendation.
With the one that has the existing pipe written across, yes, sir. And this one, if you notice to the west of the farm field, the dark green over there, we would be going to the west of that field and coming down. So we would be crossing with a large structure up there at 5 Points. I mean, I'm sorry, not at 5 Points, at Publix.
Talking about this north-south wide green
Yes, sir.
area?
Yes, sir.
And why would that not be a better option if it provides more drainage options?
It doesn't provide more drainage options. There's several setbacks to that. Number one on our priority list is time.
Okay.
The interference in that intersection would add time.
Okay, well, I'm fine, I just wanted clarification.
No, I appreciate it. And look, the recommendation too for any folks that are listening that maybe is the recommendation they're proposing is the one that avoids having to close Woodbine Road and cut the road and put a box culvert under it. So they're going to run on the east side of Woodbine Road, which we do have, you know, big areas there in the right of way. And then at least when we have to cross, it'll be further down away from the red light. But thank y'all so much again, and that's behalf of everybody that's had to rip out wet carpet after Sally. We appreciate you trying to come to a resolution on it.
Thanks, Rebecca. Gentlemen, just as I should have mentioned at the start, I do have a golf consortium meeting. That's where I represent this board on the BP oil spill money at 11. So we still got about an hour. But if we get close, I may ask your indulgence in moving, you know, the last one on there. I mean, it's listed under me, but it's just this group giving a presentation, and it affects my district, so I may want to move it up.
Yeah, why don't we do it now?
You want to do it now?
Sure.
If you guys are good with that,
I'm good with that. I want to mention too, if we have the option of moving stuff, I think I have a few residents, just, I know it's ran late. Is anybody here, just can you raise your hand if you're here about Stiles Lane area?
That's me.
Okay. I just wanted to be cognizant. If we have the opportunity to move that one after yours, maybe just so they can get out of here.
Yeah, I just don't want to miss that golf consortium meeting, because you never know what happens with the BP money if you ain't there, so. Yep. All right, we'll give you a chance to get set up. We'll take a quick, if you can, 5-minute bathroom break.
Thank you.
If we could find our seats, it's about 5 minutes. If someone could track down our fellow commissioners, they must have a different watch. Brad, could you locate the other two commissioners for me, please? Commissioners Wright, Commissioners Parker, if you're in the building, please return to the chambers. If you just introduce yourself, please. Sure.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Wes Seiler, and I am the director of Preserve Navarre. And Preserve Navarre is a nonprofit, and we exist to serve the people of Navarre. Our motto is to preserve what we love. And by that we mean that we believe that Navarre has a unique culture and a unique identity. We believe it's the greatest place to live in the world. And more people are realizing this. You may have seen in Money magazine that Navarre was just named in the top 50 places to live in the country. And that's not a surprise to us. We know it's actually #1. But it is a surprise that more and more people are finding out about Florida's best-kept secret. And that can bring growth, which is a good thing. It brings jobs. It brings all kinds of development. It's a good thing when it's responsible. It's a good thing when it continues to promote our culture and who we are. It's a bad thing if we lose that culture in the midst of that growth. And that's why we have a nonprofit. That's why we exist. We believe that culture needs to be defended, it needs to be protected, and it needs to be promoted in every development we have in Navarre. And you guys have seen us, so we've had people come up here before and talk about all kinds of different issues. You've seen us active in the community where we promote small businesses, we do marketing and help them out any way that they need. We've been active in local events and markets and fairs and anything that we can find in the community. We also do events of our own. We have meetings where we talk about the history of Navarre going all the way back to 1925. We support our leaders in our community. That's why we exist. But I would tell you that in the past few months, we've become very focused on this big issue in Navarre. This issue of incorporation and whether Navarre should stay the way that it is, a census-designated place where it has no city government, just as you, the county, or whether it should become a town or a city that has its own self-government. It has its own city council, city mayor, city services, and home rule. And this is a controversial issue. I mean, you guys know this. Commissioner Peach knows. I mean, he's seen it on his town halls. I'm sure he gets phone calls and emails all the time. You can go on social media and you can see us arguing about it all night long on Navarre about this issue. On the one hand, you have people who see nothing but cost. They see Navarre adding taxes, and they say, why would I do that? They see every tax dollar as a dollar wasted. They see no benefit or public value whatsoever that comes from government in general, and so why would they add it to Navarre? And then there are people who say, well, hold on a minute, maybe we can do this the right way, the constitutional way. Maybe we can add some services that we desperately need in Navarre. And maybe there is a right way to do this. And so we have that tension in our community every single day, and we see it all the time. And as much as that is difficult, and I hate fighting about it, I would tell you at bottom, I love this issue deeply, because it gets philosophical almost. It gets back to first principles. We don't have a city. I'm not talking about a service, not talking about a particular department, an entire city government, but we could. So now we're talking about no government where there could be a government. And how do we navigate that discussion? How do we navigate that as people from Navarre? And it's tough, but I would tell you one of the things that has been a huge help to me as we've moved forward with this effort and discussed this has been something that you guys have talked about this morning, which is the Constitution of the United States. That has been a guiding light and principle for not just me, but our entire group. And it's interesting because not only have you talked about the Constitution this morning, y'all talked about it last week. You had a proclamation on the Constitution. Back in June, there was a gentleman who came up here and he wanted to know how each and every one of you felt about the Constitution. He would not take one-size-fits-all answers. He wanted to hear from each one of you. And he wanted to say, do you support the Constitution? Will you defend it? Will you swear allegiance by it? And I loved listening to your responses. Commissioner Wright, you talked about how you keep a Constitution just like this in your home, and you teach its values to your kids. And Commissioner Peach, you talked about how you raised your right hand as an officer, and you said, I will swear to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you were prepared to give your life in defense of the Constitution if need be. Commissioner Calkins and Commissioner Cole and Commissioner Parker, each one of you guys talked about the deep and abiding respect that you have for the Constitution. That's special, because that's what motivates our group. That's what motivates me. And it's interesting because when you look at the Constitution, it starts with we the people. And then what do we the people do? They set up another layer of government. They had a government at the time, 1789. They had Articles of Confederation. The states made all the decisions. They said, you know, this structure isn't quite working for us. We need something more. And so they made a decision to raise taxes. Article 1, Section 8, right there in the Constitution. Why would they do this? They just fought a war over the British, largely about taxes. Why would the American people choose another layer of government and taxes on themselves? It seems ridiculous. Until you realize that it's connected to the Declaration of Independence and Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson says, one of his self-evident truths, that governments derive their just powers from consent of the governed. Let me say that again because it's important. Governments derive their just powers from consent of the governed. So what Jefferson is saying is that government can be good if it listens to the people, if it serves the people, if it's obedient to the people. Government is bad if it ignores them, if it perpetuates itself. So it's not so much about big or small government. If the people want something and government provides it, it's good. Even if the government is small but it ignores the people, then it's not doing what's right. Thomas Jefferson. And then again in our Constitution. Guys, this is why we did the survey, okay? So you will see in folders that I've handed you the results of a survey because people came to me and they said, hey, Wes, we want you to look into this issue. You got this nonprofit, you know, you care about culture and history, you want to get involved and make a difference in your community. Maybe you should go incorporate Navarre. And a lot of people wanted it. Not everybody, but some. And I said, wait a minute. No, not until we know if this is what the people want. Otherwise, we'd be forcing it down their throats. There's nothing constitutional about that. So I said, we need to ask. Because there was a vote in 2014. You guys are well aware. And the majority said, no, we don't want it in 2014. And if people still felt the same way, then I would not be up here right now. Because I wanted to know, maybe there's a change in appetite. Maybe with all the growth that's happened in the past 10 years, people see it a little bit differently. Maybe there's new people here, and they have some opinions as well. And so if there is this change in how the people feel, then we should promote it. And if there's not, we leave it alone. So we did this survey. And you can see the results of that. And we said, who are we going to ask? Well, not just people from our group. That's not fair. Not just people who think like I do or someone else does. Everybody. So we spent thousands of dollars and enormous amounts of time to mail every single home in Navarre, all 17,000. We put it online, and we said, hey, take this survey. And the biggest thing about this survey, and you'll see that in what I've handed you, is that we wanted to clarify what incorporation means. Because there are over 19,000 cities in this country. There's a huge difference between, say, Detroit and Jacksonville, right? Philadelphia and Boston, Tampa and Los Angeles. There are differences. Gulf Breeze is different from Crestview. There are all these differences. And so when we talk about incorporation, I said, I do want to ask yes or no and give them a scale to tell us how they feel. But more importantly, let's clarify what this means. If there is going to be a city, and it's an if, then it needs to be done the way the people want. And so they had this opportunity, and they still have it today if they haven't taken it, to be able to say not just if there's going to be a city, but what services and structure, how do they want it to operate? What are the boundaries? We gave them all kinds of opportunities, and we still have so much more to work out. But you can see the beginnings of a mandate, gentlemen, right there, of the people having the opportunity to be the drivers, to be able to tell me and our group, this is how we want it. I use the example of me being a waiter. I was a waiter for a long time. And if you tell me how you want your steak, then I'll go cook it, medium rare, and I'll bring it to you. That's what we needed, was an order, and we got that. And I don't want to sit here and say, oh, everybody loved it. Everybody's for this. There might be people here, and you probably hear it in your next session. I'm against this. I'm against more taxes. I'm against West. I'm against their group. I respect that. And you see that actually in the survey. You see people who went in there and said, 0. Not a single service. Everything's fine. I like it the way it is. You see that represented in the survey. Those people are people I respect in Navarre. Maybe we disagree on this, but that's what constitutional government is all about. And many of these folks are my friends. And we have discussions. And you know what they say to me? They say, look, I'm going to vote no on this. You have it on the ballot next fall, I'm still going to vote no. But if it does pass, I'm not going to abandon Navarre. I'll be there at the city meetings. I'll be there to try to hold the people accountable. I'll be there trying to make it the best city it can possibly be. And to those folks, I would say, that's amazing. That's where I'm at. That's what I want our group to do. That's what I want to do, is to make sure that it's bound to the people's will. And so there's this federalist, anti-federalist synergy that's happening, just like the founders of old in our community, where maybe we don't agree on everything, but we can come together, try to make this the best city possible. And then, unfortunately, I've learned that there are a small group of people, a couple dozen, a very vocal, tiny minority, of people who actually don't care about constitutional government. People who would say, I don't care if the majority of people do want this. I'm going to spend my time, money, energy, and effort to stop it. People who will attack me personally, not even talking about the issues. Call me a fascist and a socialist and a communist and a fake Christian and a liar and all these other things, so on and so forth. People that would stand against the people's will. Some of them don't even live in Navarre, and yet they just have an interest in seeing it divided, folded in on itself, and capable of progress. And to those people, and in closing, I would say this, that you will not stand against the will of the people, that the fire of American democracy still burns in this country today. You see it in this meeting, and you see it in our group, and I see it in the faces of the people who come and attend our meetings, and they realize, wait a minute, Wes, are you saying in 2021 that we can still have constitutional responsive government today? That I get to pick how this is going to go? That you're going to do more surveys later on to stick closely to my will? And actually listen and obey and serve? Because for far too long we have seen the opposite. You guys just talked about it all morning, of the federal government and multiple layers forcing down mandates that the people don't want. For far too long we have seen government that doesn't take the time to care except on election day and then ignores it the minute the election's over. Government that is about perpetuating itself, not about perpetuating the will of the people. And so I know the forces against us won't stand. Any more than the British could stand against our founding fathers. I know that the passion of Jefferson and Adams and Franklin and Washington flows through our veins. And against such forces, no one can stand. And if you are the constitutionalist you say that you are, you should be thrilled about this. You should say, look at these people. They're taking ownership of their community. You should be excited about this and say, maybe we can work together. We can have constitutional government in Santa Rosa County and in Navarre. And we can work together on projects to make the most out of every tax dollar possible. And I welcome that. And I would look forward to working with you on that. Or maybe you're going to be neutral. I don't know what all this is about. I'm going to let it pass on by. You guys go work with J.R. Williamson in the state. Do what you need to do. I respect that too. Or you can stand against us. You can create obstacles that don't exist in the Florida State Constitution, that don't exist in the Florida Election Code, that don't exist by your own staff's definition in your own handbooks. In which case, the founders have given us an answer for that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for you. You
Yes, sir.
said what services would you want a city to provide?
Yes.
I don't see any of these services that Navarre doesn't already receive.
From the county?
Yes,
Yeah, so we're going to talk about each one of these in detail.
not today.
Not today. No, not today.
Okay.
This meeting's gone long enough already.
All right.
So what we
So,
do...
just, can you pick out one of those that you don't currently have?
Sure. So it's not about currently have or not have. It's about the level of service, and that's the detail that we get into in our meeting. So let's talk infrastructure, because that's number
No, we're
one.
not. You've had plenty of time. I've had plenty of history lesson already this morning, and you're an excellent speaker. I don't know if you should be, you missed your calling as a waiter, definitely. I don't know if you should be a lobbyist or a preacher. But, you did an excellent job of getting your point across.
Okay.
I just want to make sure, one, that we're going by the support of the will of the people, as you said. Don't have a problem with it. I told Chuck Pullum, I've told people in the past, it's not my district, but I'm not going to be your flag bearer, but I'm not going to stand in your way.
Okay.
I took an oath to support the majority of the people of this county and do what's right according to the will, the support of the majority. So you know where I stand.
Okay.
But one thing I do want to see, and I won't put up with, is because I've heard loud and clear from the folks of Holly, and just like you said, you're separate. Philadelphia, Boston, all the different
Cities, yep.
differences you said. Holly, and just like Navarre wants to stand alone, wants to have their own integrity, their own government, if that should be the will of people, I want to see the majority of people from Holly. Not, I live in Navarre, I think Holly should be part of this, so I'm going to vote for Holly.
Okay.
I've heard loud and clear from the folks of Holly, they have their own voice, they have, and they didn't want part of this last time, so make sure they aren't included this time in any of your, polls that you take, unless you go straight to Holly and get a majority of people in Holly to say, we'll come on board with this. And I think the same thing should be true of the people on the beach. You've got 3 different regions, I'm going to call it out there. That's Navarre proper, Holly, and the beach. And until I hear loud and clear from 3 different regions to be inclusive, I'm going to look at it as 3 different regions. So,
Can I answer a couple of your questions?
quickly.
Okay. One, when you talk about services, the implication here is not that you don't have this service at all. It's the level of service. That's what we get into in our meetings. That research is on our website. We can talk more about that in the interest of time, okay? But I'm not sitting here saying there is no law enforcement. There's amazing law enforcement provided by Santa Rosa County. The question is, does Navarre provide another layer of that, or are we happy with what we have? Same with infrastructure and so many different things. We get into those details. That's one. 2, Holly, I literally put on here voting by precinct. So you know that we broke it down by the different precincts. I get it with Holly. They have a very strong individual, independent culture. That's exactly what we respect in our group. And so the question with Holly is, does it become a special district that has special privileges in order to maintain its history and its unique identity? That's everything that I've been saying thus far. I would never sit here and put something on Holly that Holly doesn't want. And that's the discussions that we have with those members. I'm happy to sit down with any one of them and say, how do you want this to go? Not at all, part of the city, or maybe you have your own independent historic special district in which you can protect what's important to you. That's what we're about. So the implication that I would tell them how this is going to go is against everything that we stand for. Okay? What else?
I just want to point out before we get too deep in discussion, the role of this board is to whether it goes on the ballot or not.
Right.
And just for the process for folks, because we went through this last year, it has to go on the ballot, general election ballot, as to do, and with a vote, yes or no, do they want to incorporate. Our current legislative representative, J.R. Williamson, requires a 60% plus 1 of voters in the affirmative before he'll carry it to the legislature. So that's where his restriction is. And if you haven't already, I highly suggest you get with him, because that's going to be one of our questions, I would think.
Yeah.
Is there an appetite for the legislature to carry this forward? Because we cannot. This board cannot. All we can do is either put it on the ballot or not.
Right.
What we did in the past to get it on the ballot, just to refresh your memories, because that was the group 2 years ago, I think, was working that. It was impacted by COVID, and I think the year before that was this board required petitions, much like exactly the same we have to get to be on the ballot, from 8% of the registered voters within each precinct that is proposed for incorporation. That's what we did in the past. I don't know that that's policy or written down anywhere, but that's what this board has done.
Sir, can I speak to that real quick?
I'm not finished yet.
Okay.
A proposed map, the petitions, support from the legislature to carry it forward, and then, of course, meeting all the requirements of Title 12, Chapter 165, the studies and things like that. So I just wanted to get that out for this board because we have some new folks of what was done in the past. Right. And the other question is that other group, have they merged, or is there still, because I don't know if another group's going to come to this board or not. I hear rumblings, I hear no. So okay. I don't know that the group that came, the last pack that came, has officially disbanded or not. I have not checked on it. So. Okay, let me go to the commissioners with their question. Commissioner Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask many of the questions you just asked, and look, I support the will of the people to petition and to make their own choice as long as they follow the letter of the law as it's written. And Wes, I appreciate your presentation. You did a great job. Although I do think it's a little unfair to come to this board and challenge us as if, you're either for this or you're against it, or maybe you're just milquetoast neutral. And I take a little bit of offense to that, in the sense that it's not my role to tell the citizens of Noar, I'm for this, or I'm against it, and I'm going to stand in your way. I'm certainly not going to stand in your way. I'm also not going to run around and beat the drum and, as Commissioner Cole say, be the flag bearer for the project. I don't think that's our role. We shouldn't be in the position to try to influence an outcome. It's up to the citizens, much like it's up to the citizens to vote for us, and we deal with the consequences. Right. There is a little bit of irony in this, in that infrastructure, roads and streets, which I'm going to kind of lump that all together, is the number one concern that they want a city to provide. So if you're going to be a city, you're going to incorporate. I don't know how you provide those services without a serious increase in taxes, because I don't know if you guys have done a study on what those projects would be that the citizens want, and what those costs are, and then how you're going to come up with that money if you become an incorporated area, because frankly, the majority of those county tax dollars now come out unless you come up with a way to get them back in. So I just think it's wise to make sure that in the presentation to the citizens that there's a way to lay out, here's the roadmap on how we would get there and help identify some of these projects and how you would pay for them. I just don't see how anybody in favor of low taxes, and we hear that all the time. We heard that from at our budget meeting the other night. I mean, some gentleman here right now is pretty vehement about rolling taxes back. Right. I don't know how you pay for those infrastructures without a tax increase of some sort on the people that live within that city, those city limits. So, but please understand that because I or any member of the board isn't out there touting pro-incorporation or anti-incorporation, we're not trying to stand in your way. Yeah. I just think that the process has to follow through the normal procedures and policies that the state sets forth. Yeah. And if all those are done, I certainly won't stand in the way of putting it on a ballot and letting the citizens decide, because I think it's their place to decide what they want their government to look like. I fully support that.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
Okay, good. So several things that you raised. The one is having a plan. That's how you make sure that the taxes are used responsibly, and then sticking to that plan and sticking close to the people. That's what we do in our meetings. So this Sunday we're going to have it. We're going to get into all those details that you talk about, and we're going to get into that with every single meeting that we have over the next year as we lead up to this, to figure out what do the people want for each of these services. So that detail is exactly what we want to focus on. Feasibility study, everything else that we're building speaks to that. I don't expect you to come out there saying, absolutely, I think this is the greatest idea ever. I don't expect that from you, sir. But I am here because of the petitions. That's why I'm here. I want to fulfill what the Constitution of the state requires. I want to fulfill what the Florida Election Code requires, what the handbooks that you put out as a county and your supervisor of elections has told me are the legal requirements. That is what I'm expecting, is you to stand by those, and so will I. We're not, we stand for ourselves as a group. We filed paperwork to be our own political action committee in addition to a nonprofit. So we don't have any allegiance to other groups. We're specifically doing this according to the code. But when I opened up the code and I'm looking for 8%, you mentioned, Commissioner Peach, I didn't see 8% in any of those documents. I went over to Tappy and I said, where did they get 8%? Oh, I don't know. And that's kind of what we're on about here is, if you're going to let us go to the state and do this the constitutional way, then great. We have no problem, sir. But if you're going to create arbitrary requirements, that's going to be the issue. And so if the people choose this, there's a way to do that through the votes, through us fulfilling the requirements. Let us do that so that we can answer those questions, which are very good, by the way, that you raise.
Mr. Chairman, don't let me forget, because I want to ask you a question about that, but I hadn't planned. But first I want to say, I don't think you and I have ever formally met. I don't know that we've ever even had a phone conversation. Don't know anything about you. Never been to the website. All that's the disclaimer to say, I love your passion. As Commissioner Cole said, I'll put you in the top 5% as far as people that come up here and are able to convey their point. Quite frankly, I just want to tell you, I respect you for standing up for it. You reminded me so much of myself, in my mind, of 2019 when I fought for the local option sales tax. Everything you said was why I was such a proponent for the local option sales tax, because different issue, but I believed in it. There were people in the audience that were proudly against it, but I took it on anyway. And I kept thinking, man, I love the fact that there's something you're passionate about. You're getting an unbelievable amount of criticism from a lot of folks you've never met. Again, just like when somebody from public health, but you're passionate about it. And it made me think about local option sales tax, and quite frankly, you've seen today already the diversity of opinion, and you know, me, I thought, why would I be willing to pay more tax? Like you say, a lot of folks in your group, because I saw a value added to it. I wanted more services. I wanted better roads. And you know what? Obviously, I didn't tell the story, or that wasn't the will, and it went that way. But it's such a compelling thing, even as we all say, and you will hear me say, that obviously I will support the will of the people. That's who put me in here. But it's difficult today. We even had one guy that the will of a neighborhood says, we want you to clean up your house. And then we've got a man that's put his flag in his property and said, I pay my property taxes and I own this house and I want to do what I want. And it's such a difficult decision, I've got a very close friend of mine that lives just north of Bob Talbot Road, I think is the one there at the Tom Thumb. Yeah. And he's on the east side, and he says, Sam, I don't care if they incorporate. I just please hope they leave me alone. I've been here 64 years, and I don't want it. And it reminds me, I kind of thought of Commissioner Calkins and some of his tenacity as you talked, and I thought about like abortion. Just because the will of the majority of the American people, fluctuates. We see Democrat to Republican. We've been seeing that my whole life, every presidential election. And you got the majority that say, hey, we're going to elect this guy, and he's going to put these Supreme Court people, and they're going to say it's okay for abortion. But yet me and Commissioner Calkins will fight to our death to say we are opposed to abortion. And that's what happens when you follow the majority of the people. You have to know that, unfortunately, there'll be people wrapped up in the incorporation that will hate it, that will say, well, I'm not going to leave, but I hate it. Then there's people that have freedoms. I want to wrap and say this, though. If Navarre wants to incorporate, I've had people come to me even in the previous group years ago, and I said, hey, if Navarre wants to incorporate, great. From a commissioner standpoint, I think there's some misnomers that have been provided to me on a personal level. As a commissioner, unless I'm wrong in my broad view, I see it as making our job much easier if Navarre was incorporated. They make those decisions. I mean, I'm not calling your name out, but we keep insinuating we've got one citizen that's here that he'll go argue with the city council too. And it lets those folks then in Navarre on most issues could just argue with their own city council and deal with that. We're still going to get the same tax base from property taxes as a county, so we would have the same money and not have to deal with zonings and all like we do in the city of Milton. And so as a commissioner, there's a lot of positive benefits. I wholeheartedly support, hey, what the folks want. I think, but I want to mention two things, and I mean that, man. I love your passion. I don't live in Navarre, so I don't have a dog in the hunt. And I think that's when you had said if you stand idle, stand to the side, that's me. I'm not for it or against it. If you came to Pace and said I want to incorporate, and you tried to put my house in it, I'll fight you like a pit viper. Because if I wanted to live in a city, I'd move to Milton. But I don't own any property in the city of Milton for a reason, and I own a lot of property in this county. But I want to point out, as you mentioned in response to Commissioner Wright and something he said, and then you mentioned the petition requirement. This board came up with that in the past, and me and Commissioner Cole, and I think Commissioner Peach were on the board at the time, for the reason that I recall of making sure that, and the reason I brought up sort of the non-related majority even about abortion, is so that if the Holly folks don't want it, or the Beach folks don't want it, or the precinct over here doesn't want it, that we're not lumping them together. We just saw this in an MSBU hearing 2 nights ago, where one phase didn't want it, but then as they grew, these people outnumbered them, and so they trumped them. And they forced taxes through MSBU on them. And I think that's what we were trying to prevent. And so my response to that is, even though you can't find that, I question, and I feel like I know the answer, but I may not, so I will question. You probably didn't find a requirement that says it has to go to a ballot before he runs legislation, did you?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but that's Commissioner Williamson's requirement, to be prudent to say, before I run this legislation to even put it on the ballot for a binding referendum, I want to hear from the people. And it's a safety net as a politician always to be like, hey, let's put it on the ballot as a poll, even for us, so that then we know, right? I mean, local MSBUs, local option sales tax, all those things, we get to hear from the people. But that's, I think, the heart and spirit behind the petition requirement. Is we just saw the young man the other night, and he followed the rules with the MSBU, and I think, at least me, but I think all of us saw, ooh, those rules could probably be a little better. Because what if Holly overwhelmingly says no, and I think you'd get the petition requirements from every one of them, probably, when you're talking about 8%. But the fact of the matter is at least it gives, and it would give you a barometer, and it gives those people in Holly and the Beach an awareness of what's going on. Because quite frankly, you could go to Holly by the Sea and get enough petition requirements if it wasn't required, or say we didn't do petitions at all, Holly by the Sea could vote, and they could take the Beach, they could take East Navarre, West Navarre, Holly, and that concentration. And the thing that, and I'll tell you this, I will absolutely not fight against Navarre Incorporated. I think I've been abundantly clear. As a commissioner, it makes it easier, and I want you to know that. And I do. I love your passion. But I will tell you this. All those folks you saw in the audience today, I mean, we've all been screamed at. God, they ain't even been on the board a year, and they've been screamed at plenty of times.
I've seen that.
This the ideology that, and we all believe, we have said publicly, we believe that a local government is the best government, closest to the people and most responsive. But the fact that you think that a city can't run awry of the will of the people, that's what people come up here and scream at us and tell us that, I mean, we had a lady today say we didn't care about the health of our community because we voted for a rezoning. So there's no safeguards that say just because it's locally elected that there's going to be a faction that's happy with it. But I just wanted to point that out in response. No, the petition requirement may not be in an ordinance, but also the referendum that's non-binding is not in the Florida statute. And I didn't hear you mention that. So I want to point that out. I think we're trying to do the same thing that Representative Williamson is, and just make sure that, okay, everybody at least is aware. I don't think that's an undue burden. I don't know when Tappy would say the deadline would be, but we're talking about next November. So I think we have ample time. I don't think you'll have any problem with the petitions. For me, it's really just to make sure people are aware. I don't want all the petitions to come from Holly by the Sea, and I think that's why we said other precincts. And I'm not picking on them, it's just they have the concentration. But I'll wrap it up with this. I love your passion. I never met you. I love the fact that, like I said, if I lived there, I would fight it. That's just because I don't want to pay more taxes. I mean, it's that simple. But I don't live there. I will not fight you. I will not oppose you on this. And I love the fact that you're willing to take on something that you're passionate about. even against obstacles. And so I want you to know for that requirement, I mean, I'll make sure that our board does whatever we can once we set that requirement that we've done to help do it.
That's what I need you to do, sir, is I don't have a problem demonstrating support. I mean, we've had thousands of people take this survey. We have hundreds come to our meeting. It's fine. It's the fact that it's not rooted in law. That's the problem is, I mean, Thomas Paine said that in America, the law is king, right? And so I get where you're at. I think we have some synergy.
Well, no, and I want you to, dude, I love you as a speaker, but I want you to know, really then, I think your issue is with your state representative. It's not with us. Because the whole thing about it being on the ballot at this point, especially when we're going to talk about requirements and laws, why is it even going on the ballot? And I haven't heard you, I don't know if you've had that discussion or not. Is our delegation meeting later this month or is it next month?
Next month.
October. That'd be your opportunity to come and speak with your local senator and state legislature, because quite frankly, he can run that bill without this being on there, and then this is a non-issue.
Right.
So I think that's all I was trying to do is peel the onion and find out what the reality is, and I think that's probably your issue is why does it even have to go on the ballot?
Well, and the one last thing is you brought up Holly, and I deeply respect Holly. You see that here too. Even when you don't look at precincts, all of Navarre is still split. They're still split on do we include Holly. So what I take that to mean is we are going to handle that with deep and abiding respect for their self-determination. And our group is not just this pact to do this one action. We want to exist afterwards. I am not running for mayor, okay? Our board is not running for mayor. We want to be a force that continues to do things like this as often as we possibly can to stick close to the will of the people to, again, ensure the city abides by that. So I get what you're saying, is that you don't want to just do it one time and stray from it. So, and you want to respect the diversity within our community, which I do too.
Mr. Crockett.
Thank you. Wes, I appreciate you. You're an outstanding leader. I appreciate, your efforts. I would like to say, you bringing up the Constitution, you brought up some valid points. One thing that's great about our Constitution is it's the only one in the world that's less government. That's completely, government, in my opinion, 80% of the time is usually not good because, now we in Santa Rosa County, we're trying, we got a less government type board. I think we're leaning in that direction. But also, one thing that you made a good point about, people determining their own destiny. And that's kind of y'all. What y'all are doing is, you're following a process. You're pushing a movement. Now, I know Navarre. I love Navarre. I'm from Navarre. I met my wife in Navarre. I got married in Navarre. I have a special place in my heart for Navarre. And as many of y'all may have known, when I lived there, I fought against incorporation. I went door to door against incorporation. I'll tell you something that kind of made me change. Now, I'm not saying I'm for it or against it now, okay? Because I don't live there no more, but I want y'all to determine your destiny, okay? Yeah. But one thing that drove me crazy about it was when, now this is a past issue, but when we had a beautiful sign that said Florida's best kept secret. That was an iconic sign. That was a great sign. And the BOCC decided to change it without any, and now it looks like an internet set sign and it says Florida's most relaxing place. It sounds like a retirement community. Welcome to the retirement community. Well, that right there said, man, Navarre would not have voted to change that sign. Ain't no way. There was polling on that. Navarre wants that sign back.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about, determining your own destiny. And Navarre it's a special place in the county. It's really rebel territory. It's an area where it's a special spot in the county. Y'all got 2 chambers, not one. You got 2 pirate plunges. We can't go to one, and if you go to one, the other guys go, oh, he went to that one. So I want to see Navarre unite. I want to see the chambers come together. I want to see we got 3 newspapers. And the whole county, we've got 3 newspapers, not 1 newspaper, 3.
Right.
I want to see Navarre get together, unite as a group, so we all know what to do as a commission. This is a controversial issue. People are calling me saying they're for it. I got some friends that are in your side and on the other side.
Sure.
And so I thank you for what you do, and I think, if we go with the former process. I'm okay with going with the process we had. If they get enough signatures, then, you know,
there's a couple things.
we just go by that. That's my thoughts.
I just want to respond to something Commissioner Calkins said, we got a lot of people that have moved here even since that's happened, new residents every week. So yes, the Board of County Commissioners did vote to change that sign. As I recall, and hopefully somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that went through the TDC, which is made up of 8 or 10 citizens.
Yeah.
And then the commissioner that was elected for that district came to this board and asked for that to be done. And so this board supported that district commissioner. And I'm not trying to rehash an old issue, but I think I have stood solidly by other district commissioners, especially from Navarre, previous commissioner and current commissioner. I've stood by him on rezonings and variances that there's no way I would go in my district, but I stood by him. If he came to me and that was an issue in the community, I would stand by him. So I think they got represented. Anyway, love your passion, love the idea. If the majority of people want it, I'm all for it. Honestly, after sitting here today, quite frankly, and I'll just voice my opinion, I got to the point, I think I could even care a lot less about the petition thing, because the more I think about it, it'd have to go on the ballot for a non-binding. At the end of the day, I don't even think it needs to go on the ballot. Like you said, you've got the law. If you can convince your state legislatures, you're going to have an opportunity next month to see your senator and your state representative.
Yeah, I'll talk to them.
They got to run a bill, and if it passes committee, it'll be straight on the ballot, and that time it'll be for real. It's not going to be some pulse, because really the requirement you're being asked to do, in your mind, I would assume, is probably just duplication of what you've already done.
Right.
And a delay in time that would, in essence, because that misses you a whole session. If I was advocating for incorporation, I would be passionate about saying, I need this bill ran now, because that bill can, in theory, be done before the next election's even done, because we haven't even got into starting session. So I don't think your issue's with the county at all. I think it's with your state delegation, and you pointed that out by saying the Florida Constitution. So I wish you the best on that, and honestly, I think it'd almost be best if this board just stayed out of it, because it is a state legislative issue.
Right. And I would tell you that we're not quite ready yet because of what Commissioner Wright raised. We still have a lot of questions to work on in terms of our research and making sure that we get every value out of every tax dollar. And that's the synergy that you guys are talking about. It makes me think of the dual federalism. The whole reason that they set up the federal government was to balance the states so they could work together. In America, we believe that competition is a good thing. Goodness can come out of it. So the city of Navarre is going to be saying, hey, county, I think we can do this. What do you think? And we're going to be trying to work hard with you to make sure that the citizens as a whole are getting every dollar they can spent well. That can be a very useful thing for both of us. And that's the relationship I look forward to having.
Mr. Chairman, we need to bring this to...
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap it up.
I don't see where the 8% has harmed anything in the past. It got on the ballot in the past. You're saying we don't have a law for that. We've set a precedence in the county. I think precedence takes place, and the 8% shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to hold tight to that, but I'm also going to hold tight to, I don't want to see any inclusion of Holly in this. I said it before, I'm not against you guys, I'm not for you guys, I'm not going to be your flag bearer, but I've heard loud and clear from the people in Holly in the past, they did not want included in this. And until you bring something different to the table from not a majority of people in Navarre that want to bring Holly into it, but a majority of people in Holly that want brought into it, my advice to you is keep them out of it.
Okay.
Unless they come to you and want included.
Okay.
Same way with the folks on the beach.
We'll talk about it some more. I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you want to be respectful of these folks.
Mr. Calkins, you want to brief?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with Commissioner Parker, and based on what I know about this, is they got to come, let's say the voters vote for it, and then it's got to get passed through the legislature, then it's got to come back for a vote. Is that correct? So why would we go through that layer? Commissioner Parker brought up a good point. Why don't we get the legislator, to deal with this first instead of, and I kind of agree with him on, let's keep the board out of this because, you got a good group, a passionate group. I think you all have a better chance now of achieving your goal more than in the past. So I would go with what Commissioner Parker said and just petition your legislator. I don't think it needs to go through us. So that's my thought.
I'll wrap this up. That's a great point. I'm sure you're going to get on the agenda with our legislative delegation. Since I am a resident there and I get asked the question, and I said at my town hall that you sat in, I don't know, because I want to see the study that the legislature requires, because is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right.
And that's where I'm at personally. If there's a requirement from this board, I will not stand in the way of it getting on the ballot if that's what the people want.
Thank you.
So, good luck with the legislature. Look forward to hearing back from you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
That meeting is October 25th at 6 p.m. in this boardroom, for those, just so you know. And I would suggest get there early and get on the agenda, because your time's pretty limited.
They need to get on now.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Since we moved, you want to move the styles on, Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, my wife
Over to you.
texted me and reminded me that I'm supposed to be leaving by noon today, so yes, we'll try to. All right. Stiles Lane, I'm going to probably turn the background over to hopefully either Amy or I don't know if Greg Stewart's prepared or some folks, but you'll save me from rambling through the background. I'll fill in any blanks that I know of. But quite frankly, if she comes forward, I'll say, these residents have been dealing with this problem that we're going to discuss today since before I was elected. And, as I talked with Damon Boutwell the other day with Pace Water, which I'll bring up some ideas that he put forward, I said, I'm just to the point, and when I had conveyed to Greg Stewart right before his time of leaving as official county attorney, where you can kick the can down the road long enough, and we followed, and as you'll hear today, every possible avenue to fix some of their solution and not get involved as a county. But at this point, the residents are saying, hey, we went through years of this with Roy Andrews and Stephen Furman, and I think at some point we got to step up and say, okay, well, guess what? We are these people government. They do pay taxes. Let's go in there and fix the problem. And that's, but I wanted to bring the board up to speed, and that's why I asked you to come to a workshop. I'm not asking them to make any decisions today. They probably don't even know about the issues. But Amy, can you bring the board up to speed on what you know or don't know about it? And I think between all those, and we did have some people email in some pictures that weren't able to be here today so that Sarah could show y'all.
Yep, and real quick, Amy, I'm going to turn the gavel over to my Vice Chairman, Commissioner Cole. I'm going to go to the Golf Consortium meeting, so thank you.
So, good morning. I think it's still morning. The issue is with this pond in Windsor Forest along Stiles is the actual pond site is another one of these that's owned by a private individual. The public water goes into this pond, and the county has no authority over the pond itself. We have authority over the roads and the storm sewer, but not the pond itself. There is a pipe that is failing that is going in between an easement into this pond, but again, we can't get back there because this pond hasn't been maintained by the private individual in several years. There's big trees growing up in there. It is not something that is an easy fix. FDEP has an enforcement case against the parcel owner, and they have gone after him to rehabilitate the pond and get an as-built certification to bringing it back up to standards, but the owner made a case to DEP that he financially can't afford to rehabilitate the pond, and so it's kind of just left in limbo. We've been out there, we understand the issue. Greg Stewart and I did discuss back earlier this summer, and another impediment right now is they don't have a homeowners association or anything established. So what we were discussing is maybe doing an MSBU. If we could get an MSBU where the residents in that homeowner or in that subdivision participate in an MSBU and they can get the pond up to county standards, then we would go in and then take over the pond.
So a few things, and this is when we have this young lady in the front row come forward, she'll probably even be able to fill you in on some things I don't know of because they've been dealing with it longer. Some of these are just such historical facts without having Roger and Stephen here to explain them. It is tough. When she talked about DEP, we have basically right after I got elected, a group from that neighborhood came to me, and that was when Roy Andrews and Stephen said, hey, everything Amy just told you, it's a private pond, we're not getting involved. And with Roy Andrews' help, they went through every basically appeal process they could through state agencies to have this enforceable. From what I've been told, we could have taken possession of the pond. It's just always been, no, we don't want it because it's not our standards. The MSBU process, and I've never thought of that, but I appreciate you bringing it up, I don't think would ever work on this, because the problem is it's a big subdivision, and correct me if I'm wrong when you come up, but there's only a portion that's affected. And it's been affected, this board may recall, at least Commissioner Cole, a couple years ago, we've had to go in and fix sinkholes in the middle of the road on this because it got undermined due to flooding. There's actually a couple issues that happen. You've got a flooding issue in one part of the neighborhood, and then actually in a separate part of the neighborhood, you have this huge overgrowth pond that, I mean, yeah, like she said, it hasn't been maintained in my lifetime. And that's so commensurate with the size trees you see in there. That is no fault of the county. That is not to blame any past of the board. That's not me derogatory of anything that was done. But I'm saying we have worked through every process, and the reason this got brought back up in the conversation with me and Greg Stewart was because it came back that all this action we try to do with DEP, it came back with the result of, sorry, we can't force the guy to do anything. So now these homeowners that have paid taxes for over 20 years are stuck with this. And I'm going to tell you my position on it. Same way I told Damon Boutwell. This county, it ain't no different than Ashley Plantation that we're working on, Tiburon that we're working on, Sheridan Drive. Previous times, and this was before Commissioner Cole was ever on the board, none of us, except maybe Mr. Cook, even worked at the county when this happened. But this was approved. It was allowed to be happen by the Board of County Commissioners. And so now we can't fix the sins of the past, but I think we owe it to our citizens to step up and say, it's a problem. I don't know that this board's ever been made aware of on a board level. I don't think we've ever discussed this on a board level, because the previous county attorney and the previous public works director always said, this, you know, I mean, we had several conversations, and it was, we're not going to get into taking these private ponds. And I get that, as Commissioner Cole talked about, with precedents. But this is one where, quite frankly, I think we're at the point where we look at these folks, and they've done everything that our county attorney and our county public works directors previously have asked them over the years. There's no resolve other than to say, hey, we need the local government to come in and take care of the people that we were elected to serve, the people that we collect tax dollars on. The MSBU process, again, we just saw it with lighting. We can't ask 10 people that are negatively affected, or 20 people out of 100. The other ones won't foot the bill. It's the same way we see issues with MSBUs. I told you I've tried to get, look at Ponderosa Drive. Look at Ron Jamar Drive in Milton, where the roads become impassable, but folks say, hey, I'm not going to pay to fix that road because that's not on my section of the road. But I'd like her to come up. I wanted you to kind of give the background, and if there was anything you could fill in. I think the DEP case was the biggest thing. I'd like for her to come up and sort of tell the board about the challenges she's seen over the years. And I wanted the board just to be aware today. It's not an action item, but I would hope that we would at least get some support to move forward with allowing staff to come back and say, look, it's super easy as a business or government entity to say, sorry, we're not involved. I think we owe it to the people. I mean that. Like, man, when I knocked door to door and said I'm running for county commissioner, I didn't run just to say, well, this problem sucks. It doesn't affect me or takes up money, but whatever, they're on their own. I mean, hell, y'all knock door to door. These people's vote mean the same as the people down here that aren't having a problem. And one other issue, and I said I'll bring it up so I don't forget, that me and Damon Boutwell discussed, and I told him I would. And anybody that doesn't know, Damon Boutwell runs Pace Water System. And could somebody pull up the property appraiser's website or the GIS map? I don't care. I'm just more familiar with the property appraiser's website that we can view on this thing. Will they pull up Stiles Lane so that we can see it on the TV? Or I could point it out to the board on Amy's TV if we'll go back. I just didn't see it on my. Okay, so where Amy's pointing, yeah, so that's the retention pond you'll see in the middle of the subdivision that most people don't even know it's a pond because it's like a forest. But directly east of that, as Amy pointed out, there's like 12 acres or so. So Pace Water System recently bought that, and it wasn't for much. He said it was only maybe a few $1,000. I looked at property appraiser. I think it only shows $1,000, but they got it because they needed an easement for some force mains because of some of the growth happening in the area. He told me, he said, Sam, all we need is the easements for our water and sewer line. We don't need it. And he said, I think this would be a great opportunity. He reached out to me because he saw the agenda item. I'm so thankful for him. I'm thankful for Pace Water. But he said, look, we'll give it to you for what we paid for it. We don't want to make a profit. It does two things. Like he said, it's a natural drainage area. Topography, he told me. He's an engineer, so I'm going to trust what he said. I haven't looked at the topo map. The water drains that direction anyway. He said, you know, even if the county bought it to protect it as a green space, or if you bought it to somehow improve as part of a drainage system, because he said one issue, to his knowledge, that the one that's outlined in red doesn't really have a pop-off. It would just basically overflow into the road in these people's houses. Versus then we could go over here. So the county has an opportunity through partnership to acquire a lot more area that is, for those that aren't here, and I wish Commissioner Calkins was, just so I could point it out, this is directly south of that Ashmore drainage easement we were just talking about. I mean, it's right down the road. But ma'am, I want to just invite you up to really, and that's kind of what I conveyed to you. This is just the point to bring the board up to speed. Because of sunshine law, we can't talk about it privately, and that way they see it, and then maybe we could come up with some ideas on moving forward. But Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I can ask just a couple quick questions. So we've got some similar issues in the south end where we have privately owned ponds and some concerns there. I guess two questions, I guess, are more legal issues. One, I know the normal MSBU process, but can we force an MSBU or we can force an MSBU? Okay, in that case. So the other question I've got, and I'm not sure how we ended up in this position, I'm sure you're going to help tell us some history of it, but what outlet does the county have to go back on this private owner of this pond through civil action? And I'm not saying that we do that to solve the issue, but as a backup, can we not take legal action against that property owner
So
from
that
a
was
civil
one
standpoint?
That was one thing I brought up back when me and Roy and Stephen first met about this about 4 years ago. And evidently, it's an elderly man at this point that was a developer. I don't guess, and Stephen and Roy had looked at this before I was elected. So evidently, he doesn't. I don't know. I'm not the attorney, but I'll just share with you basically what they had always said is at that point, I guess, either through financially, and as she said, the state determined that he just didn't have the ability. I think he was a successful developer and builder at one time, but maybe doesn't have the assets. But that is really what they tried to push, was this guy built it, he's a developer, he should be responsible. And that's why it went through that case. And the whole thing that brought this back up was when the state came back and said, hey, I don't remember the terms, but I forwarded Greg and I think Amy the email that basically we're not enforcing it. So
I view it as a two-prong approach. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be in support of doing whatever it takes to solve the problem, immediately. I think that's our responsibility as a board. But secondly, I think we need to basically set a standard. Show that you are not going to continue to get away with this in Santa Rosa County. And I think we need to go back after the private owner, whether he's got $2 or $100,000 or $4 million, just as an example to say, we're going to recoup whatever we can to go back and repay the taxpayers for you making this terrible, egregious mistake, basically. And then also to set the standard going forward that says, we're not going to allow developers and private individuals to go around and cause problems on the backs of all the taxpayers in the county. So I'm 100% in support of addressing the issue in the short term, but I think we need to do something on the backside as well.
Mr. Nicole, if I will, I just want to say I fully support that, but I think the biggest problem will go back to how I said the unfortunate manner is this project was approved by the county engineer at the time that this was done. It's no different than Ashley Plantation has a severe problem, and Rebecca's got me a binder this big on my desk showing the problems. But the sad part is they got it approved through the county engineer at that time. And so I think that's where it falls on the county's problem.
Approved or unapproved, if he hasn't maintained it,
Yeah.
if he hasn't done what he was supposed to do to maintain the pond, however it was originally approved, I think he, in my personal opinion, I don't know what was agreed to at that time, but I would think that individual developer was supposed to be responsible for maintaining it.
before you speak, give me just a moment. Amy, could you answer something for me? I see Stiles Lane in the middle of a whole bunch of other homes. Why aren't they having flooding problems? Where is their water going to?
Can I take that?
Sure.
There's an easement, we have a pipe that goes in, and the pipe we have that goes in here, we believe is collapsed, and that's why it's flooding right in here. But the issue is getting in here and getting back there.
So the drainage pond is actually back here.
Okay.
This entire greenbelt area is right here. Our house sits right here. In front of our house, there are two culverts drainage that go back to this. This one is actually collapsed, and all the water from over here, here, and here goes down to that low point. That's
Okay.
the low point in front of our house. Our house is raised up quite a bit, but I'd say on the average of 2 to 4 times a year, we have water that comes all the way up to our front step.
Okay.
It's come all the way up to our top front step several times, and in 2016, our garage flooded, as well as the people that live here, their garage flooded, and their garage flooded.
Okay. So everybody else in that whole area seems to be pouring the water. Okay.
Yeah, so these two, our house, this house, so that's 2, 3, well, no, that's not right. Sorry. This one, this one, this one, and this one, and this one. There's about 5 houses that have the potential for flooding, and those are the only ones that are affected because that low drain in front of our house.
Okay. Amy, when we have road maintenance on this area,
Correct.
but not drainage. So,
We have the pipes and the roadways.
okay, so why don't we go in there and replace the pipes and get it going back into the pond where it's supposed to go?
And that was part of the issue, is getting back in there, because it's so heavily wooded, we'd have to clear the whole property to get back in there, and then we need to, I think there's some impediments too, there might be some fences and stuff that are in the easements.
Our house has a fence here, because you got to think about it, the water's got to go all the way back to here to get actually to the drainage pond, and the drainage pond is very overgrown, as she said. And we took pictures back here in 2017, and I think you have some of those pictures. In this area right here, this area has basically become the drainage pond, because the water won't go back here anymore. This area has become a drainage pond
All
around our house.
right. I got questions for Amy, so Sam, let me.
I was just going to say what Stephen, because I met with Stephen and Roy on this a lot of times. Like Stephen said, he goes, look, we can get in here, but we don't own the land. And he said, and then we have to clear it off. And I understood all the reasons then, but there's access, but it ain't the county's access. And so like I said, I just feel like we kicked the can as far as we could, but now I'm pretty sure it's coming to crow.
And there's some, from what I can find from the old construction plans, is that there's a pipe that goes here, there's like a junction box here, here, and then it goes out there. So there's a couple different structures in there as well.
Well, you can't convince me if there's still a pond dug out in there that having trees growing in it is, trees take up a lot of water. Why can't we, instead of taking a big hammer approach to this, take the little hammer approach? I'm with both my fellow commissioners. We need to fix the problem. Fortunately, they haven't had water in their house, so I don't want it to get to that point. Why can't we go in there and get the culverts running back to whatever's remaining of a pond, and not make a mountain out of a molehill? We're talking about going in and clearing the whole pond. To me, the trees are drinking up water, weeds are drinking up water. Let's just get the water off the road back to whatever resemblance of a pond we have. I could support Commissioner Parker's suggestion of picking up the extra property for future and keeping it from being developed. But, to me, it sounds like we're making a mountain out of a molehill instead of just getting the pipes clear and getting the water off the street back to whatever resemblance of a pond is still back there.
I think, and I'm afraid we might be, I just want to make sure we're clear, is even what Amy's saying, the same thing Stephen said, but to get to those pipes that discharge into that, the only access they would have is they got to clear to get heavy machinery through there. They can't the machinery they need and all, they can't blow through where those houses are and get to it. And it actually discharges on the property that the county don't own. And so that's what Stephen said all along. And while we never did it, he said to get there, you're talking about carrying excavators and dozers. And so in theory, you would clean it along the way. But I want to point out one other thing she didn't say. Look, I'm the first to say nuisance flooding ain't house flooding. That's why we got HMGP problems and all. But what she didn't say, and those couple pictures that were sent to me were actually by a new resident that's lived in the county only about 6 months. And so those pictures are super recent. What she didn't say was, and if you've never been there, I'm telling you, her house is probably as high above the road as these lights are above the ground. So when it does flood, it's the same thing that happened in Crossroads subdivision. They cannot, nobody can get in or out, and they're almost all elderly. So it's not getting in the house, but they ain't nobody coming in or out. I mean, it is above the mailboxes on just a good rain.
It comes above our mailbox. It comes above our,
Okay, so what legally can we do to get into that property? Certainly there's got to be something we can force to be able to get in there and get access.
I would have to look into it and see whether or not, since that is privately owned, it's very similar to what we were talking about earlier with the overgrown bushes and everything. So I'd have to look at that.
And I'm sorry that
You've got
Greg
my
Stewart's
commitment,
not
whatever
talking
it-
on this because
Whatever it is, you've got my commitment, I fully support it. Whatever you
Greg's
gotta
had a
do.
few months to go back and research this and get brought up to speed, and I don't even fully understand this whole, like, he still works for the county, but he's not the county attorney. I was hoping he'd chime in, but basically, from what Roy had told me in the past, it's just got to be the county willing to say, yeah, we'll take the property. I think the guy's ready to give it to us, but the county was always like, we don't want to set a precedent that we're doing that. And I'm the district commissioner, and I went with it, but there's no other alternative at this point.
Well, and I'm not for setting a precedence, because one of the things I want on a near future agenda is the idea of us not taking any more ponds or roads in subdivisions and requiring the HOAs to do that. My concern is what happens even if they had an HOA that went defunct. Let's say that was the case instead of this gentleman going defunct. How does the county step up to the plate? And if we can say to this whole community, for the betterment of the community, we're placing, let's look down the road, we put this in action, that we don't take communities anymore, streets or holding ponds. You got one HOA that collects dues, they fix their own roads, they take care of the holding pond. You got one down the street that 20 years after we do this, that HOA goes defunct and it doesn't happen. How can we implement the means of maintaining that? And to tell them, okay, when your HOA goes down to tubes, you're going to get a MSBU from the county, a reasonable amount to do this maintenance, and that MSBU, just like any of them, is just for your community. I don't want to set a precedence where now we take the pond, we fix all this, and then somebody goes back later on, if we incorporate this idea, and says, well, 20 years ago, y'all did this for this group, why won't you do that now? I would be more, I'm okay with taking it, but we need a means of, of financially to, even if the man gives it to us, a financial means to maintain this in the future. It shouldn't be on the backs of all the people in Santa Rosa County, and if we don't start addressing these problems one-on-one, and saying, okay, your community has a problem, this is how we're going to fix it, and this is how we're going to maintain it in the future, we're just, again, kicking the can down the road. So.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Commissioner Cole, and I think for Devan and Brad, this is something we probably need to bring back up for another discussion topic on how do we set a policy in place going forward on a process of how we would take over ponds if we needed to, and what the circumstances would be and how we would enact those MSBUs, because I think this is something that certainly we need to be thinking 20 years down the road on.
I think you're both on the right track in terms of that, because what we don't want is everybody coming out of the woodwork. Every developer that owns a private pond that we have public water going into, and then the county's going to be getting tons of these requests. I'm dealing, we're working the one on the south side right now that has a DEP action against it where the developer went belly up and they're quick claim deeding the ponds back and forth. And so we're using the MSBU as a way to try to then resolve that issue to be able to get the county to then take it over. So I think that is a very important aspect of all of this. We don't, you know, open that door for everybody just to throw their liability, you know, to the wayside because the county is going to come swoop it up and save the day. Another part of this is the DEP enforcement case against it. So having to bring the pond up to standards, get the recertification and all that, we would then be taking that responsibility on. So that's just something you have to be mindful of.
Amy, let me ask you this. Show me over there where the pipes that are collapsed run. And Sam, I know this is your district, but you know, you need all our support to do this thing, so.
Well, I can't tell you exactly where. I believe it's in here. I don't believe it's in here, but the pipes, the inlets come, I think it's right in here and across the property. There's a junction box, a manhole, you know,
Okay.
junction box. Then from what I believe, another manhole, and then the pipe goes out somewhere into here.
All right.
And I
Now-
think they're 24-inch RCP is what my understanding is according to the plans.
And we have an easement where? I was told, you've shown us earlier, we have an easement.
Right in here is where I believe we have an easement through here and here and here, so.
Okay, but we have nothing off of West, what is that, West Evan?
Westland, no.
Going over to the pond, okay.
No, sir.
So what's our options? Do we get written authorization from the folks that will have to be in their backyard or in their side yard and say, okay, we're gonna run all new pipes and then we're gonna put all your grass and everything back again?
If we do it through here and here, because of this growth, I think it's going to exceed our easement, and that's where I think kind of the questions with my predecessor and the previous attorneys came in, is I think it's going to take a lot more heavy equipment in here to get through and to be able to mobilize, and that would go outside of our easement.
And how would you get that heavy equipment in? What would be your idea?
Our only option right now is through our legal easement between the houses, and I'm not sure if there's sheds or fences, so any of that would all have to be removed by the county and then paid for and reestablished.
In your opinion, do you think that could actually be more costly than going through the wooded thing?
I don't know
Especially
if
if
it would
the
be-
operator accidentally bumps it and hits the side of the house with a
I
excavator.
understand. So you,
There's a brick garage in that back corner.
Right in there, or there, is that?
Right here, yeah. There's
Yeah,
a
but our-
brick garage building, storage building right there that's huge, so it would be pretty close to that.
We'd have to
easement line.
survey the easements and for me to be able to make that determination. And that's the problem with a lot of situations I'm seeing now, is we have these drainage easements and residents aren't really aware of the drainage easements, and they're putting sheds and other, type of architectural features on them. And so it makes it difficult for Road and Bridge to then go in and maintain the infrastructure we have, because now we're not going to be able to move a brick, structure that's right on top of an easement easily or without cost.
That's been there since '91 when that house was built, so that's been there a long time.
But it may or may not be in the easement. And I guess we could
understand.
go in and try to survey and at least try to determine where the easement is to be able to
Okay.
make some determinations of that.
Well, I'm-
But
Mr. Chair?
In terms of cost, I can't really say.
Mr. Calkins.
Yeah, if there's an issue with access, I remember, like Gulf Power, for instance, gave me a $500 check to, cut down, trimming some trees. So another idea might be, if we need a house to get access, we just offer,
You missed part of it. Look, we can get the pond. That ain't gonna cost us nothing. That, I understand the bigger issues, but I don't think we need to be buying access that's still not even gonna solve the pond problem. And I appreciate everything I've heard, because I know, guys, I mean, we do have to look at a lot of other citizens, but we gotta look at it case by case. And I think now y'all see why I talked about the MSBU as such a minority, but it's because everybody dumps on them. But the easiest answer that Stephen always said, but again, you got the county, and I'll say this, I went with this as the district commissioner. I'm not saying it was wrong. For the 4 years I was elected, and that I had the same public works director and the same county attorney. We went through every process to not touch it. We went through every process that our attorney and our public works director could possibly say, let's put it back on them. Would you agree? Y'all sat in on meetings, we had several, and we did that. We were like, we don't want to touch it. Stephen didn't want to take it, Roy didn't want to take it, but we exhausted that through the DP. There's nothing else to do other than just look at them and say, we're not going to help you. Well, we are, but we don't need, I think Amy would tell you that the thought of buying extra easements, the easy part is you just come into the part that's already growed up and defunct, and then you don't have to pay anything.
Sure.
Yeah, Sam, here's where I'm at with this.
There's 3 different phases of this subdivision. There's this phase 1, this is phase 2, and then this is phase 3. So from what I can tell from the plans is we have water coming in this way, and this way. We have 3 different entry points going into that pond. So I think the 2 phases of the subdivision contribute water to this pond.
Thank you, Amy, and that's where I was getting at with this. If this is a platted subdivision, Sam, I'm willing to vote that the county takes that whole pond over, but I'm also going to add to that a platted subdivision is a platted subdivision, and that we incorporate a MSBU to recapture the money that it's going to cost to fix this and keep that MSBU in place to continuously maintain that pond. It shouldn't be up to just the 5 people that are having the problem when everybody's contributing to it. So if we break out the old plans and say this is a platted subdivision, everybody in the platted subdivision is going to pay part of this MSBU, and we incorporate that MSBU to fix the problem, I'll vote to take control of the property. But if we don't do something like that, and this may be the first case that we do, we're going to get it coming to us. Well, you just set a precedent. You took this one, so now take mine and fix it. We got a problem too. Well, fine. We'll take yours and we'll fix it. But understand, everybody in that platted subdivision is going to get charged. And it could be a minuscule amount. It may be $5 a year or $10 a year, but it stays in that subdivision for that particular purpose. And that's the only way I see it being fair to everybody in the county that has a problem, or anybody in the county that's a taxpayer that doesn't have a problem. So if it costs you an extra $10 a year, and, well, but the people way up the road say, because of you, I got to pay an extra $10 a year. Well, yeah, but your water comes down the street to my house, so.
He's getting $200, $300 worth of pine straw every time I put pine straw out in my yard and it floods down to his house.
What's wild?
I understand, and I just want to try to set something where the board can get started down that road of trying to dig our way out. I don't mean it as a pun, but dig our way out of this problem, because it's only going to grow on us if we don't. So
I like that idea, but we just voted as a board not to do a communication cell site, so it was going to cost people less than $0.25. And because we had
nothing to do with it.
Well, I'm saying, but it was to help the population in general. I can only imagine how, I don't like these bad words, so I'll say upset, that all those folks that don't experience flooding is going to be when they get that notice. But I'll say this, every time I ever talk to Stephen, the reason I never thought about MSBU, and I never heard that come up until Amy said it, and I love the spirit of it, but it goes back to actually, I'm going to say, is me jumping in line with how you've always been I always thought we'd do this in-house. I mean, we've been able to get a lot more capital equipment through LOST. We just approved, I think, 11 new equipment operators, which I know is for mowing, but they obviously don't mow in the winter. We have got top level guys in public works that are overworked, and so that's why we're trying to get some more. And it wouldn't be an overnight project, but it's been an issue. So it's not like, hey, we have to go gangbusters and put the whole crews on it all at once. It could be like how Gulf Power is doing right now on power line easements. They go over here every Friday when they finish their other jobs. They go and trim them lines over by the Pierce Connector. But we wouldn't have to do any cost. It would already be built into the tax base if we utilized our in-house forces. Would that be correct? And then it would roll into our in-house maintenance, because if we did an MSBU on maintenance, I mean, we know if we go out to an engineer, and this is like me and Devan talked about recently on that recycle building that could have been fixed for under 100 grand and been done. But we went out for bid, and then we got an engineer, and now the costs are over twice what they were. But I really see this as, I think I just got fired up when I saw Devan's letter right after he got appointed administrator, and I loved it. He said he reminded all the people, we work for the citizens. That's our job, and that's why I mean, if I had to do an MSBU, I don't even know if I could support that, because now I'm going to have all these other people throwing a fit saying, well, I've been paying property taxes all this time, and you've been squandering the money away. It ain't my fault.
Well, you know that's not right.
But you know they'd be I hate to say it, but they'd be pissed off. Well, and they're going to say, you can't even pass a franchise fee to help get everybody, or a water management fee, or a communications tax fee, but now you're going to hit me with an expensive thing? But if we do it in-house, we don't have to do an MSB.
Sam, are you aware,
Mr. Chairman?
hang on.
Sorry.
Are you aware that right now we're considering, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, Public Works outsourcing cleaning of some holding ponds because we cannot get caught up? And now you're saying, well, in our spare time, we'll go fix this one.
I wasn't aware of that. I haven't been brought into the conversations that we were considering. I know that would be through the Public Works budget, though, I'm assuming, but I haven't been brought up to speed on that.
That was part of the plan through the budgeting process. We've set aside some money to try to help with outsourcing some of the easy pond maintenance and try to catch up on the 380 ponds that we have. And Commissioner Cole is exactly right. We can't even keep what we have in place that we currently own maintained, so it would be a challenge to then add that, incorporate that one in. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but then it's just, kicking the can on the other ponds that we already own and we haven't been maintaining.
I would support that. I think here's going to be a divide of the board. I would support it if we did that fair across the board. If we're having to contract, and ultimately then it's like, well, we could go to a stormwater MSBU countywide, which Dan Shelber talked about years ago, but we really get gun shy as a board when we talk about a new tax. We'll never reduce property tax burden or percentage without different taxes. But how is it fair to do an MSBU here and then not down the road? Because y'all are both paying the same property taxes, you and the neighborhood beside you. And so then you go into, well, how is it not fair? And I guess I may have missed if some of that was in the budget or whatever. I know I brought up the goat situation because it's working great in the town of Jay, and that there are cost-saving things we can do. But if we're going to do MSBU and we're going to be fair, we got to do it countywide. And then all of us say stormwater is a problem for the whole county, and we're all going to pay a stormwater assessment. I don't think this board will do it because, quite frankly, we ain't, as a board, had the backbone to stand up and invest in infrastructure the way that I think we should. That's why I advocated for the sales tax. But I'm saying through franchise fees that I brought up, this board, we had 10 people come against it and we lost appetite for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, from studying this issue from the beginning, flooding is not my favorite issue, but we were hired to fix the flooding. And it's something that we spend a lot of time on. And I concentrate the most on District 3 because I'm the representative of District 3, and I kind of depend on my fellow commissioners to handle, their issues in their districts. And when I saw this from the beginning, I saw it as a concerted effort by Commissioner Parker to try to do the best for his, citizens and working with staff. So out of the gate, I know there's a lot of debate here. I'm for it as is, as the way it is. I do see the argument on the MSBU side of it. I have concerns about that, and one reason is because we're supposed to be, we got to dig ourselves hole by hole by hole by hole, because eventually it'll be solved. Eventually we're not going to, there are other areas in the state that don't have flooding issues anymore because they finally finished. We're not there yet. But we got to fix it piece by piece by piece by piece, and so that's just my thoughts on it.
Philosophically, I think the MSBU is the most fair way to deal with it. I think everybody that lives in the neighborhood has some benefit of that holding pond being there because it was part of an entire development that they all live and reside in now. And to me, that's the reason why the pond was originally built, was part of the project. And just because one individual did not maintain the pond and do all the things they were supposed to do, I still think the entire platted subdivision benefits from it being there. And the fact that it's currently failing based on some pipes, I think the MSBU process for the entire neighborhood is probably the most fair way to, I think it is the most fair way to do it. And when it comes to getting access to the pond, I don't understand. Have we reached out to this elderly gentleman that apparently owns it and says, can you just sign a document saying we can just drive our excavator in there? And if we haven't, this is just me. Just put the excavator in there and get the work done.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, but that's just.
That's actually what the previous attorney and public works director fought against. Yeah, the access availability has been there all along, but it's always been, we don't want to get into that because it's private and we'll set precedent and we got these other ponds. And that's why I say, guys, I think y'all know, I mean, I'm not going to argue and burn my political capital on a project that's like, no, this ain't a Woodbine, this ain't a 5 point, this isn't a big voter issue. I've only got 5 or 6 people that are almost all elderly that are affected. And for me, but philosophically, it's like, I've watched behind the scenes. We've kicked the can as long as we can, and now it's like literally she just needed help. So I'm all for the cheapest route, and maybe we just go in there and fix those pipes. And like Steven said, he said, Sam, if we cleared the way to get to those pipes, you're talking about probably 20 feet because you're going to have equipment through there, and it can get dug out along the way. We don't have to, bring it up to certain standards unless we might, when you get into these DEP, my God, we got so much government, we got to bow down to the state. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. So maybe we do, but I don't know. And I'm with you philosophically. I'm in the MSBU 100% until I look at the other side of the coin. God, it's like incorporation. I'm divided on myself. That says, what about all these people that say, I paid property taxes. I know the couple because I sold the house at the very entrance of the neighborhood. They had lived there since the neighborhood was built, like 28 years or something like that. And what about them? They're like, I've been paying taxes all this time, and it ain't my fault, because we get pissed off citizens that say, y'all squandered the money. Well, what do you mean you ain't got the money? Look, we're paying over $60 million a year on this approved budget for the sheriff's office. There's people that ain't never called a cop. But we do it, and I think you got 2 philosophies. Do you pay for your little segment? Or do you say, you know what, as a whole county, we fix it? People that, in my district, elderly people may never go to Benny Russell Park, but we did it for the good. Navarre Park, a lot of people in Navarre don't, I think
the house wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the development. I guess that's where I'm at. The house, somebody that's against the idea of the MSBU, that they're not currently experiencing flooding, they would not have that home had this development not been approved and the developer do it. That's where I just believe the MSBU is the fair thing.
I'm with you on that, but I want to bring up one other point. This problem wouldn't exist if the county would have stayed on top. And this was before any of us were with the county. This was, you're talking about 30 years ago. But if the county would have stayed on top of, did they approve it? I mean, you saw what happened even when we did a code enforcement. We're like, hey, we're going to crack down. And then it blew up because we had let it get laissez-faire for so many years. So at some point, the county has to accept some responsibility, too, that a county, a board of county commissioners approved that plat back then. A board through years and years and years before any of us allowed this to go defunct. These people have been screaming about this for years. And the boards have always said, no problem. So at some point, when do a board accept responsibility as an entity and say, I know it wouldn't us, but when do we say, hey, we kind of let it get to this point? It didn't, I don't know. We let our own pipes collapse. Like Amy told you and Steven said, our pipes have failed. And no, we don't even have permission to get in there and fix them because it ain't our property. It goes into that pond. At what point does the county say, okay, the county screwed up, but we gotta man up and fix it?
Well, I'll support whatever it takes to fix the issue, and I'll leave it at that.
Sam, let me ask you this. You're telling me, or telling us, that years ago, that man, or even yesterday, the guy that owns the pond was willing to give us an easement to our pipes. Just say, here, I'm signing off, you can drive your tractors across it.
Yeah, and I think he lives in my district.
And they pushed, and we had staff that pushed back against that. Because to me, that's the simplest route. If that gentleman says, Public Works, you can go across my property here, I'm signing a paper saying legally you can go from West Lynn, is it Lynn? West Lynn, across my holding pond to get to or across the top edge of that pond to get to the pipes. That would have been the simplest fix years ago. I don't understand why there was pushback from that.
I was out there earlier in the summer. I think there is some grade down in there, so you would have to definitely, it would have to be along in here, and I don't know what's along in here.
Okay.
But all I would say is I have to defer to an attorney to be able to see if we go in there and do anything, is DEP going to come after us?
Okay.
And I would just,
If we can get an easement in writing to go across there, get to our pipes, fix the problem that is currently our problem, and then drive out of there and leave it alone after that, or grass it, whatever we have to do. Like Colton, I'm good with fixing it. Then we can get back, now that we've kind of started this discussion on what do we do in the future on MSBU. If you want to bring it back that, hey, we've talked to some folks, we're willing to take the whole pond and take it to the next step and incorporate an MSBU, we can get in that discussion on another day. I think you got some support of the board, and Amy's got direction to help these folks the quickest way we can. And if that involves getting that easement or temporary easement.
I appreciate that, because honestly, that's all I and the citizens wanted. And yes, I will say, and the citizens can be my witness, we sat in that conference room with Stephen and Roy, and that is where the pushback came. It ain't because this commissioner didn't want to do it. But I think, knowing how busy Amy is and Rebecca, and quite frankly, since we've got our attorney, Devan or would y'all feel comfortable if our board could kind of give guidance to ask our attorney to reach out to the landowner? I think he lives in Ashley Plantation. I don't know him, but through all this mess. And she handles securing whatever legal documents we need, because Amy's obviously got plenty there. Can we go ahead and task you with that? Perfect. Does that give you something you could report back to the folks that at least now, and I feel great that the board is fully supportive of that.
Sam, I'll take that a step further, or you can.
Commissioner, are we talking about the owner of the pond or the owners of the houses?
The owner of the pond.
The pond, okay.
And I'd take it a step further, since resources at Public Works are so tied up, go ahead and get estimates on outsourcing having it done. Okay.
I'll leave that up to Amy's professional discretion. One other thing, is the board comfortable, as I told Damon, he doesn't need an immediate thing, but I said I'd get the barometer. Is the board comfortable that we could let Devan or Brad tell Damon to at least say, hey, look, the board does have an interest. I'm not saying we're committed, but we do have an interest, so we don't want you to do anything with that. Based on his conversation, I know he's a man of his word, that we could get that for what they got it. And then we could decide later, do we keep it as a green belt? Do we need it as future drainage?
You got my support, Commissioner Parker.
You good with that, Devan? I mean, all right. Yeah, or bring a price tag back. He told me he thought it was 10,000 or less. Property appraiser only showed 1,000 for all that property, like 12 acres. And it's because it's basically useless, but it's like he said, it would give us a chance to protect it, or if we need it as a pop-off for a drainage or whatever, we could use it. Thank you, Devan. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry it's belated, and thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Parker, I'll give you an update on that other. We're looking through some asset management groups and going through the procurement process. So when we have that finalized, we're just trying to get where we can be in a proactive stance instead of reactive like we've been for years. So that's the point of that, and it'll come back to the board when we finish that procurement process.
And you're talking about for the maintenance of the holding ponds?
Holding ponds or any other asset that we might have in the county that we could look at. We want to look at assets as a whole. So for example, this year when it was very rainy, there's companies that offer mowing of our right-of-ways. So we want to look at it as a whole, where we can target areas when we need them, when Amy's staff is overtaxed with a project and we need some asset management. So it's kind of like an a la carte, if you would. So as soon as we get that information, we'll be coming back to the board to discuss that.
Thank you.
All right. I think we'll go back to staff updates on number 4 is where we're at, I believe. Courthouse discussion.
The number 3 item, Rebecca updated me that they were not able to provide us any of the task orders. So as soon as we get those task orders, we'll bring any of those back on the Woodbine Road discussion, so we can just table that for now, and as soon as we get those task orders, which we were hoping to have, but they just couldn't get it, so we'll bring that to the board at a future meeting.
Okay. Did we miss item number 2 under staff updates? Commissioner Parker's asking that. We did? Okay.
We did.
can
We
go
did not
back to
cover
that.
Tiburon yet.
All right, who has that one? All right.
Good morning again, almost afternoon. So this is just kind of circling back around when we first advertised and let the contract for Tiburon. There was a large deduct, this is before my time, but I believe it was a funding issue. So there's a large deduct that happened. And so now that we're starting to wind down that project, I wanted to bring to the board to see if you guys wanted to kind of put what we deducted back into the contract. And the portion of that is from Kendall Boulevard on West Spencerfield Road down to Fowler, and that's piping that ditch and installing the sidewalk. And because it was deducted, there's a little bit of a cost increase because they didn't, or of course, order any of the structures 2 years ago. So with the inflated prices of stormwater structures and stuff, the prices have been increased. So it's about $424,000 to add that back into this project. Is kind of one of those ideas where it's designed, it's done, it's shovel ready, so let's go ahead and finish the project while we have a contractor on site.
My only comment I'll make on this is it kind of reminds me of the courthouse. I think this was Dan trying everything he could to get as many projects going and squeeze out, and like how this board, he came back and said, you know, hey, if we don't do these holding ponds now, we can save some money, but obviously down the road it could cost more. And when we started this project, we weren't even sure if the local option sales tax would be renewed. And I think knowing that it's been renewed, knowing that this is the largest drainage project in my district by far, that affects hundreds of homes when you look at the downstream, obviously I'm going to fully support it as the district commissioner. It is, to put in perspective for everybody, this is a ballpark of about a $7 million project. It is huge. It goes through numerous neighborhoods, by schools, by DOT easements. I mean, it is a monstrous project. But I think to finish it, it seems crazy when you look at a percentage. This is only a very small percentage to do the deduct and basically not complete it and do it right, like you said, because the engineering's already there. So, of course, I'm going to support it, but...
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner Parker, when if this is to come back to before the board, I would certainly support adding that back in.
Mr. Chair.
Great.
Got my support, too.
All right.
Thank you much.
All right. We're going to go back now to item number 4. I see city manager standing here. He probably wants to know a little more about the courthouse. My idea on the courthouse at this point would be we immediately start getting bids for removal of the temporary and to board up the back of the building once it's unoccupied. We owe that to the city of Milton to get that done as soon as possible, because certainly we're a day or two behind our memorandum of understanding to allow the temporaries to be down there. I think that went back in history probably to the Stone Age, so we need to take care of that. And I've told Brad this morning, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, that I think everything they take out of there, the portable office spaces, any of the understructure should be part of the bid. In other words, if they want it, they can have it. If it's cheaper to get that stuff out of there by letting them have the product, if they think there's a resale value in it, then I don't see us spending a lot of money, having that taken down, finding a lot to store them on, and then try to sell them. So if somebody wants to make the bid on, here's our bid, as long as we get everything we yank out of there, that's the way I'm going to go with that. So, Commissioner Parker or Commissioner Cockles.
Thank you, Commissioner Cole. I basically agreed with everything you just said. I'll support that also. And I think we just need to mow the sucker down, to be honest. but I'll go with what.
I certainly would agree with that. Just one thing, just for transparency's sake, I think it would be good to make sure there's some type of itemization or a list of what those assets are that would be being removed, just so that just so the citizens understand it doesn't look like anything's being given away untoward.
And of course, I'd want to see a significant savings in the cost, like, $1 million and y'all keep everything, or $500,000 and we get everything type thing, just throwing an example out there.
We're not talking about the contents, the office furniture and all, right?
No, just
the structure. I think
Of course,
that's
at
always
this point,
pretty.
they may, we may want them to take all that too.
I know the clerk had asked us to allot some of the money that, basically he said we give money back. This was a year or so ago, but I'm going to give it back, but can you use it all for office furniture in the courthouse? So I don't even know. He may be planning to buy all new stuff and not need it.
We've got some of the new stuff through the year this year. I don't know that we'll need a lot of that back, if any at all.
I think I don't want to overcomplicate that bid. I think it's always pretty much understood in the bid if we need a bid to demolish it, and I think they account for that. Whoever gives us the cheap, you can put in there. Obviously, they're going to keep all the materials, but no different than that one we tore down up there by the soccer fields. If they can scrap it, that needs to be part of their bid. I don't know that there's a separate itemization or anything that's needed. I think it's transparent to the public. We want a bid to tear it down. If somebody wants to come do it for free or give us money, they can put a bid in through procurement. I fully support that. I mean, because I think with the agreement with the city, that's got to be done. And then I guess at some later date, we'll be discussing, obviously, I wouldn't want to do it without Commissioner Peach here, what we're going to do with the actual building, because I think we're a long way from deciding that.
Well, since Commissioner Peach isn't here, he left me a note. He says all the only county involvement after that's done is buy a for sale sign. Randy, you care to speak to this?
Randy Jorgensen, 6738 Dixon Street, City Hall, City of Milton. I do care to speak to this. This is the Courthouse Square in downtown Milton. This is a very prominent piece of property within our community, and its future is important to the council. There has been, over the years, expressions made by individuals before you and some of you now that we'll just hand you the keys. No, not necessarily to the bulldozer, but one of the things that I feel is important, what would we be bulldozing? What, from a historical standpoint, would we be removing from the property? What, on an asset list for Santa Rosa County, would we be losing, if anything? I don't know that the courthouse could be included on that list. It might be better found on a list of liabilities. Now, what you have in front of you is a memo I wrote to the city's leadership, wanting to look at exactly what it is you are dealing with. This is your courthouse. But when we say it's your courthouse, what do we mean by that? What is the potential future of that property? What is its highest and best use? If you go to sell the property, what's it worth? Are there issues with the building? Are there issues with the envelope? Are there issues with the heating and air? Are there issues with the drainage? What are we talking about? Well, there was a study done in 2003 that was fairly extensive, and it identified a number of issues at the time and characterized the building as being sick. I think if it was sick in 2003, it has suffered for a long time. But in Florida and real estate law, and Sam probably knows this better than I, what could have been known should have been known. And I would think that you would want to know exactly, when you talk about the future of the courthouse, what that means. When you talk about bulldozing it, what's that going to cost? When you talk about the removal of the modulars, which I really appreciate, because I think the 5-year agreement was entered into in about 2006. And one of the provisions in that agreement also indicated that the county will reconstitute Oak Street, which sits under those modulars. And we have a real interest in ensuring that it is reconstituted, that Oak Street is put back to a use within the city, just in the same state it was in before the modular was placed on top of it. So that's another potential cost driver from your perspective, but it's certainly one I think you need to anticipate incurring because it was a part of that agreement. At any rate, what are you looking at? I don't know what ultimately the decision will be for the county board as it relates to the disposition of this property, but when you talk about this property, I like to ensure that decision makers are in a position to make informed, intelligent decisions. And I've outlined a group of individuals that could be assembled from various fields that could provide you with information so that you can. An architect, a civil engineer, a realtor, a market analyst, potentially a historian. That's a call that someone would have to make. But assemble a group similar to that and task them with the responsibility to go find the facts and to provide the facts back to you so that when you make a decision, you know the decision you make is sound based on those facts. They don't have any other responsibility but just to gather the information and give it to you. I think the city has an interest in trying to determine what's there. And is willing to work with you to achieve that objective. There may be some nominal cost in assembling a group like that, but I think we even help bear a portion of those costs. Yeah, bulldoze it. That's the easiest thing to do. Sell it. That's another pretty easy thing to do. But don't you want to know what you're selling? And what its market value is before you place it on the market? And those are just some fundamental questions.
I want to point out, I'm not sure if anybody else was at the meeting. Randy probably was. The city, and it was awesome, hosted Quint Studer a few years ago at the Imogene. And if I recall right, you were probably there. If I recall right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, I think Quint had said at some point it would be prudent to get a appraisal, and I'm going to say I think it'd be prudent actually to have 2 appraisals and not 1, but he said based on 2 things, an appraisal of what the property's worth with the building and what the property's worth without the building. Because, when we look at especially that building they did right by Blue Wahoo's, and I see what the city of Milton's done, I like the idea that Quint Studer had. My God, I ain't nowhere near as successful as him, of appraisals, and I think you do a dual prong that way, and you do a cone of silence to where those appraisers can't talk to each other, and you get a real unbiased 2 opinions from professional realtors that would have qualifications that may or may not even be able to come from this area, because you're talking about a very unique structure, kind of like when people get appraisals for insurance purposes on baseball parks. There's only a few people in the country that do pretty rare things, but I like that idea, and I also like the idea I want to mention of basically what y'all did just downtown with the Riverwalk concept, and we did it with a spec building, although we had 0 bidders that put in when Shannon asked us, you asked for a proposal. I think that's another thing we could ask for, that I've had at least one business owner in the area mention interest, and quite frankly, I don't know if his interest was for the building or bulldoze it, because I can tell you the fellow that's doing the old school board building on Berry Hill, if you talk with him, an amazing family, amazing group, my God, they own Cape Horn, he'll tell you that it turned into a bit more than you thought. And to save, a historical shell, costs tend to go up because now but I think it would be real good that we could open and not obligate ourselves to, kind of like they did the Riverwalk, hey, bring us a proposal. somebody might bring a proposal and says, I see that as sort of a joint venture with the city. I think the city's got more interest than the county about the future of what could it be. But I think you and I both know, if we're going to talk realities, the city has many more forces than the county does of people that don't want to see change. I think that's hard to argue. I'm not necessarily saying through an elected standpoint, but especially as you mentioned, historians or historical societies, historical and economic engine don't always, sometimes they can merge, but they don't always merge. But I think we have options that we could put. I think it's smart, as you said. I agree with your memo. I agree with knowing what you want. I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money like we did at the Fidelis School, and we only did that because we were going after that historical grant, and Commissioner Salter wanted to necessarily go through and give a condition of it. I think you could do that as part of the appraisal inspection. That is a part of an appraisal, is they do an inspection. And I think that's money well spent on this board now that we are actually approaching abandoning the building. And then we would know, and that's about as transparent as you could be with the public. Here's what the cost, here's what they say it's worth with it, here's what it says for bulldoze. And then at that point it becomes, do we enter a joint thing with your board that says, well, we want it and here's what that deal would look like? Or do we say, let's put it up for sale? Because from what I've seen from your board, I think they want to see a thriving downtown. And we know that government and thriving are not hand in hand. And we know that a private investment and spur down there, I think, would be the best thing. So,
well, I want to see that the building, if it remains, is put to its highest and best use. So that's part of what I'm asking to be analyzed when you talk about 2 appraisals, and I couldn't agree with you more, and that is, in fact, what Mr. Studer had indicated, that it may be even 3. I mean, I know the historic core has some intrinsic value. It has some history. I don't know that it has a future, but that's what I would ask for these experts to try to determine. The wings are brick, square buildings added to the side of what really is the historic center. I don't look at them as having intrinsic value, and so what is its value without them? So there's a lot of questions that I think surround the future of the courthouse square, with or without the building, and I'd like to see a lot of those questions answered. I'd like people to be in a position to make informed, intelligent decisions, and I'd like to assemble a group to achieve that objective, and I'd like to do that jointly with you. It's your property, it's your building, it's your decision. But part of my job is to help get people to making good decisions, and I think this might get us there.
Randy, as district commissioner and dealing with this for a long time, but I'd like the 2 appraisals, and then I'd give the city first dibs on it, that just take it, here it is, or we put it up for sale. And that's as far as I'd go. Now, knowing that, in the future, if the city had it, just like they have other assets downtown, I think myself or any future District 2 commissioner or a board as a whole, there'd be a willingness, if the city took it, to work with the city to develop, just like we did on Quinn Bayou and stuff like that. We'd be a partner with you, but not the lead agency and you and the city working with the county. It's within the city limits, and I think that would be probably a more prudent way to go in my thoughts. I'm one commissioner, so, but that, if I had to vote on it today, that's the way I'd vote to do it. You know, get everything cleaned up as we promised, discuss it with the city on how we want to rebuild that road, whether we wanted a through road or wanted just a parade route, and like maybe put pavers in there and balusters where it can't be driven on daily, but if on a parade, it could be, the balusters be taken down, and then a parade come down that street and flare out at the monuments. You'd have all that room for increasing, sounds on the Blackwater. The events you have down there, you'd have a lot more park area. But if I had to vote on it today, I'd say, get the appraisals, here's what it's worth. Mr. City Manager, does your city council want this set of keys, or do I turn them over to a realtor?
Well, and I think I started with, there has been some discussions of, well, we'll give you the keys if you want them. I want to know what "here's the keys" means. And I would hope that you would want to know that as well. On your concept of Oak Street, couldn't agree with you more. You just described what I think should occur there. Certainly the grounds could add to our festival and event area. We reconstitute that property into an area that would benefit the community, the public at large. I mean, certainly if you look at our events nowadays, you all know what we've got going on downtown. If you don't stop down there Friday night, you'll see. There'll be thousands of people. And that could contribute to continue those efforts and expand on what we're already doing. So I like that concept. The appraisal, I'd like to see that expanded a little.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Okay. Yeah, so I think we need to have some appraisals done. I think two is a great idea, maybe even three. But we need to have the building appraised, and I agree that we need to have it appraised on its current condition, and then what it is just as vacant land. And I think at that point, then we have the ability to talk about, what does giving the keys look like, or what does a sale of the property look like. I think until we know that value, the market value, it's really hard to talk about a decision. I do think that there is a tremendous amount of vision and a lot of different vision on what it could turn out to be down in downtown Milton, and I'm not going to expound on all that right now. It's not really my place to say. But to say there's a lot of opportunity for downtown Milton, yeah, there's certainly a lot of opportunity, but I don't think we even know how to go down that path on what it could be until we know what the value of the raw land is and what the value of the building is as it sits.
And apologize for jumping in late, but I was in that golf consortium.
I passed the note on.
You passed it? Yeah. To me, I look at it, Randy, like when I sell a house. I get an appraisal, I put a price on it. If someone wants to buy it and they want to do a home inspection, have at it. I've never heard of doing a home inspection before you decide what to do with the facility. So I'm kind of in that ballpark. We need to get the appraisal, we need to get those buildings down and then have some good hard talks, because my experience, vision is good, but when you visualize that building, I see mega dollar signs that bring it back to what it should be. I've abated lead, I've abated asbestos, I've had sick buildings before. It's not cheap, and I think that's the only fair way is figure out what it's worth, figure out what the land's worth, and then if there's visions, who's got those visions needs to figure out, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Can I jump in, Randy? So I think we are all on the same track, but I want to merge what Randy says. I can say I think it would actually be beneficial not just to the appraisers, but here's what the big thing is, especially when we get in government. We don't want that building, if we say, hey, it's worth more to sell the building, we don't want to sit in vacant for years, because that ain't doing nobody good. I will say, so I have seen it on some homes, but when you get into commercial buildings, I'm doing a commercial building deal in the city of Milton right now. And it's nowhere near as complex, so I hired the inspector. The courthouse, I would think, and especially since we're talking about the fact that we're representing the public and being transparent and trying to get a real thing, I don't think it's a bad thing to hire a structural evaluation of it, basically an inspection, have a commercial specialized inspector come in, have that report and provide that to the appraisers. And the reason I say this is, I'm not saying it for Randy or the city of Milton's thing, but those appraisers would want to know that in their valuation, because the difference is if you do it afterwards, it could sit there forever, because we could have an appraisal and then you have people like the gentleman that went in on the Berry Hill Road project go in and they're looking at it and they say, God, you actually, and this would allow your appraisers to give you the most unbiased, you might find that there's a negative value. You might find that if I was going to assume this courthouse and be locked in and not do anything, that it would cost me more than raw land because of, as he said, I mean, potential mold, HVAC. It's functionally obsolete. Since we're dealing with the public, I think that would be the difference. If it was private, I wouldn't even suggest that. I mean, there's no way I would suggest that to a client selling a commercial building, except for the fact that it is the public. And I think part of that could keep us out of hot water from a standpoint of you're going to have people that ain't happy either way. But if it goes the route that I think it could potentially go, and that's to say, hey, this would be better to be a clean slate. And then, in my opinion, that'd be an opportunity that we partner with the city on, yes, selling it, but inviting, a proposal. What could you bring? But those folks that are going to be hooting and hollering and mad about it tore down, if we had that independent, hey, here was all the problems with it. We don't even necessarily have to have an exact cost associated. Because I don't want to get into where we spend too much money, but somebody can say, my God, that building really did have a lot of problems, and that's why the appraiser said it needed to be torn down.
My fear is that those dollars, as you identified, Mr. Chairman, are tremendous. I've seen at least one concept, and I indicated to the individual who was showing it to me that this is north of $20 million. Well, all the money that the city has at its disposal right now is dedicated to one effort, and that's build a wastewater treatment plant. I can't entertain a conversation of $20 million on any other endeavor, nor do I believe you necessarily want to. So I think the appraisal is a wonderful first approach. I do think that you need to understand, if you ultimately do determine to place it on the market, what are you selling? And so if the county moves in the direction of having it appraised, to me it would be actually three values, with the core and the wings, and barren. But that's your decision to make. I am happy we're having the conversation. We're getting movement in the right direction. We realize this building's going to be vacant soon. Let's figure out the future of that property and go from there.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we're all on the same page on this, but, it's too far, that part of it's too far down the road. I'd like to see what we achieve today is the staff direction to start immediately getting cost on removing the portables, and possibly that could be twofold, and then shoring up the back of the building. That way, as soon as Mr. Spencer or whoever powers to be says, we're out of here, we can pull the trigger on that contract and get that done. And then we can go from there on the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Staff can bring, proposals and, contract commissioners.
Just one question. I'm assuming when we ask for that, it would be shoring it up as cheaply as possible, right? Like the stud and plywood. And then the one other thing, I guess if you'll bring back, I think you probably would, but just bring back proposals of how you think we pay for it. I don't know what funds. I was sitting here thinking about that during this thought, and even if we did a drawdown on the courthouse loan, to me, even though it's an old building, it's still part of the courthouse. But that is for Jane, that's way smarter than me to figure out. At least bring back a few estimates of how we pay for it or what funds that would come out of.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman. I understand the motion, or it can't make a motion, but next Tuesday what you'll take up. I would like to get a commitment from the county board that that's one action step. There are numerous action steps that must be taken to make a determination of the future of that property, that we will vigorously pursue the resolution of those questions.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, as district commissioner, we need to. That building sitting empty is not going to do anything but deteriorate the values of downtown in its entirety and become more complicated in disposing of the building. So I certainly, I mean, as soon as it's evacuated and we get those out of there where a good assessment can be made. For an appraiser to go down there while the portables are sitting there, I think would not reflect correct appraisal. And once they can look at, hey, this is what I have to work with, this is what I'm going to possibly be putting on the market, then we can initiate that as soon as those portables are out of there.
So I get an affirmative is the impression I'm getting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I think we've all heard loud and clear that we need the appraisals. So if those, whenever staff thinks, however long they determine it's going to take to find appraisers and get that initiated based on when the portables will possibly be gone, I think we can go ahead and give staff the lead or the leeway to say, you hear what we want to be done, just in a normal course of time, let's make this happen.
Carry it out. I understand.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rain. Okay. Is your commissioner item still left, or did you guys cover that while I was out? That should be the only.
All right. Yeah, this was a discussion of issuing a letter of support to People's Home Health as a request in the email September 16th, 2021. And this came to me from some folks I know that live in Baghdad, Lucy Bailey. It's to provide some hospice care for injured folks, and there's really very little or no cost to the county, so they offered to come if the board likes to speak next Tuesday. I just need to give them a nod on that, or if the board feels strong enough on it, we can just put it on the agenda for Tuesday to vote on the letter. But Lucy's indicated to me that the representative from People's Home Health would be willing to come and give a short presentation. I just need to give her.
They're just looking for a letter of support to
work on that, yeah. And probably we ought to have a short presentation next Tuesday to give everybody more insight to what exactly that entails. So.
Sure. Can we make that happen?
No,
okay.
Let her know.
And that's it. Okay. According to my agenda, everything is checked off. Is there any other discussion for this work session?
Commissioner, I was in an email chain going on, so I figured it's a good time to update y'all, especially the two from the south end. We've had an increase in vandalism at Tiger Point and Navarre, so we're going to start shutting those bathrooms down in the evening. We'll work with the association to get access to them when they have practices, et cetera. But we've also looped the sheriff in, but it's a continuing, escalating problem that's going on.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's unprecedented this year in the schools and everywhere, and I would just urge everyone, if you see something, say something so we can put a stop to this, because this is just costing us funds that we can't spend elsewhere. So, please. Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, it has gotten out of hand. I will say Tuesday night after our meeting, I went down to some games, and the bathrooms were locked, so if we can just try to figure out how we deal with whether it be TPSA or whoever, to make sure that on game and practice nights we do have the bathrooms unlocked, because I frankly heard a couple complaints from constituents that night about it.
Yeah, I'll make sure, Tammy, but according to the email, they're working, I believe it was with David, on getting those, and I believe there might be a way to time lock them as well and unlock them and relock them. So,
if you just do me a favor and
I'll follow
keep
up
me in
with
a
you.
loop on any of those emails, just because I'm sure I'll get some questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Cox.
Thank you. This is one of those examples of, bad people kind of messing things up for everyone. And well, my thoughts are, and I'll support you, Commissioner Wright, on, if we can get some cameras outside to at least, and potentially, because usually these things come in, they'll be usually the same group of people, and once you catch them and teach them a lesson, that tends to stop. We talk about fines. Well, there's a type of, I don't agree with the other fines, but on fines when it comes to vandalism and litter, those are things that and setting examples, because this is very important. But you'll have my support on getting that situation addressed.
Thank you. I think bathrooms is kind of a unique situation because there's an expectation of privacy there. But just so the board is aware, when it comes to cameras, there are certainly some cameras that I've been discussing with staff at boat ramps and other facilities where we're having some consistent vandalism. So I think as a board, that's something we should be looking at going forward is how do we use technology to help make sure that the general taxpayer's assets, and public property is being preserved and best protected. So I agree with you.
Just quick comment. What I meant by cameras is like if you have cameras outside the building.
I know.
And commissioners, with the new
wanna
radio
clarify, thank
system, with a new radio system we installed back in 2007, we have been able to expand that network, and we've added security cameras at all our tower sites. We were able to just tap into that same system and put cameras over at animal services. So that may be another avenue. We can use the radio network to transmit those back. We have a huge display and dispatch with all of our tower sites, et cetera, so they can see when there's action. So we'll continue to research all the options and find us the most economical way.
Thanks, Brad. No other business come before us. The work session is adjourned. Thank you.